What is up, RotoGrinders? We made it to Week 18 information slate, or the misinformation slate, as Bobby is trying to make happen. We talked about pre-show. Maybe we'll talk about that throughout the show. This is the People's Show, just 2/3 the People's Show. Myself, Bobby Gomes, $4 million winner. Kyle Murray stepping in for Tim. Tim did have the fish. Hopefully he feels better. We'll see him soon enough. It was a hell of a run. Tim smashed all season long. I know he took down one of those big single entry contests on DK. Was the Spy. He had himself a good season, and it's unfortunate he's not here, but we are fortunate to have Kyle Murray step in. Kyle, welcome. Week 18. We're here for the next an hour and a half till we yield to Ebeimfohr and Squirrel. The entire show's here for 3.5 hours, taking y'all straight up the lock. Those that are still grinding with us, shout out to those in the chats, especially on the West Coast, 6:30 in the morning. Good Lord. Good morning on the West Coast. Hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn on those notifications. Do join the conversation because, again, and it's kind of a free-flowing one. It's not, the format is not fully cemented even on Week 18. We're just kind of bouncing all over the place, and I'm sure we will be, especially on this slate, because information will probably be trickling on through, or at least reports coming through, and we can kind of figure it out and talk through it. Actives and inactives, really, really important this week. It is worth noting a ton of games are late. 6 early, 7 late. They backloaded the slate, so you're going to need to pay attention even, for late swapping stuff. We won't get actives and inactives until 2:30-ish for those games. But Kyle, welcome. We're going to talk a little cash games, like a cash game shell, but we'll do that in a second. But Kyle, welcome. I want your general Week 18 information slate thoughts. We were talking, should we be playing more today? Should we be playing less? What is your strategy? How you feeling about today's big boys slates?
Yeah. First of all, happy to be here, joining you guys. I've been watching you guys every morning for the whole season, so excited to be on the other side of it here. But I think this slate, at least from my perspective, obviously a crazy one. Working on the projections all week, so it's been very hectic to say the least, with all the news and maybe non-news and all that stuff with everyone resting and whatnot. So I do think it's gonna be a hectic one, but you kind of alluded to it before we went live, where it is a spot where there's so much up in the air and maybe so many question marks, to where maybe that edge can be something that you can kind of reach out and grab with all of the kind of confusion around some of the news. So I do think it's a good spot. I think you can either take advantage of maybe hoping that there's an added edge there, or if you're someone who wants to save maybe a headache of maybe not knowing all the news or wanting to know all the news, there's that as well. But me personally, I'm going to be playing a little bit more than normal here, but nothing too crazy.
Did we persuade you, Bobby? Are you going to be loading up a little bit more today? How you feeling as far as Week 18? A lot of information coming through, not coming through, a lot of kind of guesswork as well. I want to pick Kyle's brain as far as being in the projection team this week. I'm curious how they came up with some stuff, because, and I'm sure, there's other guys that are on top of it, and they're going to be, tinkering with it all the way up the lock as news trickles in. But this is not, I'm not jealous of those that had to make projections this week. It feels like a tough one for sure. But yeah, Bobby, how we looking as far as this week? Should we give the rundown as far as motivation stuff, or that'll just kind of come up organically throughout the show? How do we do that? Should we knock it out at the top, or it just kind of comes through as we're talking about the games and the players? What do you think, Bobby?
I think it'll just come out organically. Welcome to the misinformation slate, people.
Smash the over.
Yeah, I know. This is going to be a big Dean for Slate, big purveyor of misinformation. So he's ready to go in our chat all week, talking about aliens and lizard people, Epstein client list, anti-vax, all this stuff. I don't know where he was going. He kind of made me a little nervous, but we're here. We're ready, sir. We're going to be talking. We're going to be talking Week 18, the information slate, and you're just going to be up on news. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to be flowing in, probably up to lock. Kind of not like an NBA slate, but we have the majority of stuff that we think is kind of trending certain ways. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be on the projection team this week, but yeah, it seems like a pretty good slate. I have some thoughts on it, especially how to play some of the chalk and stuff. So we'll get into all of that.
Yeah, but I think it's important to mention, and I feel like, a lot of people haven't really noticed just the way, however it works when it comes to putting out content. People just kind of focus on DK for whatever reason, and I'm guilty of it too. Maybe because it's more fun to build, but FanDuel this week included the Sunday night game, the Buffalo Miami game, which is a spectacular game, and both teams are fully motivated to win. And I think it's got the highest total on the board if you include that one. I think it's 49.5 or so. No Mostert, he's not expected to play. Waddle not expected to play. So if you're playing on FanDuel, absolutely pay attention to that game. And Kyle, just like a general thought on that, like I feel like is that game, I don't want to say it's going to be lost, but like some people just like didn't even know it was in the FanDuel slate because it's not paying attention. If you're playing on FanDuel, you should definitely have that in your pool and maybe get over the field on it just because it's possible people are just kind of neglecting it. But that would be a mistake as far as I'm concerned. You have a thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's the the game with the highest over under on the board. So, and I do think that just naturally, it could get left out because, like you mentioned, people sort of just refer to DraftKings. Honestly, when I logged in for the week, I didn't realize that they added it either until I started doing some content and some projections. So, yeah, I think that's going to be something that just sort of happens naturally. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting game and one that I think is going to be exciting. Obviously, both teams kind of looking to clinch the division there and whatnot. So I do think that's going to be one that is potentially producing some fireworks. So definitely one to keep your eye on.
Do want to ask you this, Kyle, by the way. You're a Lions fan, right? Aren't you in Detroit or based in that general area?
Yeah, yep.
Congratulations, by the way. It's
Thank
been
you.
yeah, I mean, being a Pistons fan, I imagine. Are you a Pistons fan too?
I am, yeah. Well, as much as I can be, really, but
sure.
Yeah.
Understood. What's Dan Campbell? Is he really
That's unfortunate.
The Dan Campbell thing is outrageous. Like, he's been a good coach, good for him. He's, rallied the troops. Like he's got to the playoffs. Is he really going to play his players in what appears to be essentially a meaningless game? Like I know there's mathematically a chance where they can move up if like they play earlier and later on Dallas and Philadelphia play. And they need Dallas to lose a game where they're favored by 2 touchdowns and Philly to lose a game where they're favored by like a touchdown or so. That's their only chance of moving up. It seems like a terrible idea, but like if you type in, football coach into like Chat GPT, like his Dan Campbell's picture and description comes up. Is he really playing his guys like full throttle? And that's that. Like, this is where we were talking about a pre-show about the coach speak index, and I think he's been one of those coaches that actually has been truthful, more truthful than most. I'm so scared of Detroit, but like in theory, they look awesome against Minnesota. If this was week 10, loading up on Detroit. Just wanted to ask that question. I know the motivation stuff we'll get throughout the show, but what is your read on that? What are the local papers saying? I'm sure you get the local paper on you right now.
Yeah, so it's actually funny because I got into a huge debate last weekend with my friends about Dan Campbell going for 2 after they were back to the 7-yard line. So I tuned into because he does an interview every Monday or Tuesday, and I tuned in to see what he was going to spew about the 2-point conversion. And he sounded like he was full set on playing his guys 100%. They wanted to win. I think he quoted, "You never know what can happen in football with both of those teams losing. So if they have a chance to move up, they're going to try to do that." And it's not necessarily meaningless because it could potentially get them a home game, so that it does mean something. But obviously, when you need both those teams to lose, it's probably going to be unlikely, especially like you mentioned, with Dallas being such heavy favorites against Washington. And then another quote later in the week where he said they want to, quote, use their full arsenal to go out there and beat Minnesota. And I really don't see why he would be, lying about that. Like he's not tricking Minnesota. Like it doesn't really affect Minnesota. Like they're playing Minnesota, but the reason why they're playing their players has nothing to do with Minnesota. So I think it'd be kind of weird for him to go out there and lie about that a couple of times. But he is definitely an oddball coach, so I guess we'll see. But it could be a good tournament spot because, like you mentioned, I think people sort of feel that I guess that shaky ground there. And one thing I noticed was Jared Goff's passing prop was very low throughout the week. I think it was 208 on FanDuel this morning, which obviously is averaging over 265 on the year. So definitely seems like maybe they know something or think something there. But I do think there's a realistic chance that they maybe play full steam here in this one.
The other thing is they're just 4-point favorites against Minnesota at home. Like if this is week 10, they're probably like 6-point favorites, maybe 7-point favoriits. Is that fair to say? It'd be more than 4. Yeah. You got a thought on that, Bobby? How are you handling Detroit? Because again, the matchup is awesome. I know Jefferson's going to be popular. Even people are playing Mullins. Well, I should say even Mullins is like one of the chalk quarterbacks, and we'll talk about the cash game quarterbacks in a second. But do you have an official thoughts here, Bobby, when it comes to Detroit? And if you're a tournament guy, I guess you're supposed to play more than the field because the field's scared. And what if he's not lying? But you tell me, how are you handling Detroit?
I currently have a little Jared Goff. I have some Jared Goff stacks, but I'm on Raw, Laporta, Gibbs. Those will be guys that I'll be I guess I'll probably try to work them into my builds. I don't know if I'm going to be overweight on specifically Jared Goff stacks, but those ancillary pieces I'm definitely going to have as run backs to my Nick Mullins stuff. I think Campbell's a pretty forthright coach. So I'm not like, I think they're going to play. I think it's a horrible decision. I wouldn't play my guys. But
we saw it last year with the Chargers. Mike Williams getting hurt in a meaningless game, and the Chargers. Whenever something can go wrong, it is going to go wrong for the Chargers. I
don't know why you would risk like losing a guy like Laporta or Gibbs or Amon-Ra, but they seem to want to just win the game. So
yeah,
they're going to do that and they're going to play. I'm going to have interest in them. I think they're definitely viable as run backs because Mullins grades out really well. Jefferson grades out really well. I have a ton of interest in Jordan Addison. I think he's a very sneaky play on this slate.
I love that call.
Yeah.
So everybody's playing Jefferson.
Everyone's playing Jefferson, and Addison, we've seen that. I think it was a 2-gamer like 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. Addison was basically the guy you needed. He's got 2 touchdowns from Mullins, 14 targets, 10 receptions. So I like Addison a good bit. And this game in general, I think it's a really good game to get an allocation to in tournaments and just for the slate in general.
The other angle is like Detroit is just, Campbell's trying to build a culture, like a winning culture there too. If you and maybe that's part of the reason why they're going to go for it too. I don't know, man. It doesn't make sense on the outside looking in, but I think there's a pretty decent chance they play their guys. Also, Kyle, the snubbing of Amon-Ra, I'm not a big Pro Bowl guy. Like, I don't even know who's on the Pro Bowl team, but I saw that Amon-Ra's not on it. How is that? Who's on it in front of him? That seems outrageous.
Yeah, I don't know the exact list of who's in front of him, but I know that's going to be something that he's going to, have as another kind of chip on his shoulder there. He was the guy that, list the 18 receivers drafted in front of him or whatever. So I'm sure this is just more anger for Amon-Ra. But yeah, kind of strange to see that, especially because some of the NFC receivers have actually been banged up. Like Jefferson was banged up. So, a lot of guys, Amon-Ra's been up there in terms of top NFC receivers up there with CeeDee Lamb, but it definitely got snubbed.
Shannon in chat says Jefferson getting 1,000 yards after today. How far is Justin Jefferson from 1,000 yards? And is that still like a benchmark? Is that still a thing that people care about 1,000 yards? I know Kelsey is close to it. Supposedly they're going to get him as 16, I think the number is, and then he'll probably get out of the game. It might take him all game the way Kelsey's been playing all season. He just might never come out. It's been a rough year for him, but I guess it's a good. And again, we're gonna do that cash build in a second, but I just want to let's finish this thought, Kyle. You've seen a lot of stuff, I'm sure, even on Twitter about motivation. Some of it's silly, some of it ridiculous. Some people take for real, and I think a lot of it's kind of case by case, and there's a lot of nuance to it. I don't think there's a ton of motivation stuff out there today, personally. What Mayfield gets a bump if they win. I think Jordan Love gets a bonus if they win. Like, what, he wasn't going to try to win until he's got a bonus. Like, okay, he's going to try harder. Schultz had one yesterday. I'm not sure if he got it or not. They were just trying to win the game. Well, there you go. You have a general read on that? I think, sometimes it matters. Sometimes it doesn't. Hopkins is one they're kind of pushing that I've seen out there that seems realistic within region. But there's not much. I don't see a lot that excites me from the motivate. Puka probably plays and gets the rookie record and comes out, right? Gets 5 catches and 30 yards or something like that. Rams have no reason to push him. But you got anything motivation-wise, or is that all just nonsense and for clicks?
I do think that sometimes it can be useful and helpful, but I feel like this year compared to years past, it's just, more garbage this year, I guess, just because a lot of the guys who either have something that could be meaningful, like you mentioned, they're also playing for something. Like, for example, I think Alexander Madison needs 75 yards, but Minnesota's trying to win. So they're not going to, go back to a guy that they've benched already just to, get him an incentive, right? So things like that, I just don't think are going to, play that big of a part. I do think that you mentioned Hopkins. That's one that could make sense. Like, he needs 2 touchdowns and I think 40 yards and 7 receptions. Obviously that would be a great DFS game. So that's something that, could make some sense there, especially for a team, with nothing to play for. So I think that's maybe the only one that I really think is either one that's in reach or one that makes sense, just because I think that a lot of the guys who maybe have something in reach are playing just to win. I think that's the biggest motivation. And then the rest, it just seems like are out of reach. I think I saw, someone tweet out Khalif Raymond needs 200 receiving yards or something like that. And it's I just don't, that stuff's, not worth talking about. But so yeah, kind of a boring year in terms of week 18 incentives.
Madison needs 74 yards for $250,000. Why would Minnesota want to reward this guy? He's been terrible all season long. Like, thank you for being terrible. Here's some more money. You've been one of the most inefficient running backs in the, Chandler's the guy. Like that's the one that to me it doesn't make any sense. Like, maybe he's a nice guy. I don't know, but like it doesn't make any sense to we got to see what you have in Madison. Like Chandler feels like he's unseated him. By the way, Jefferson like 120 yards or so away from 1,000. Austin Eckler needs like 110 yards or so. It feels like he's sputtering to the finish line. He's going into free agency. He's going to be 28. Like, why would you push that guy? They did say, the coach came out, Coach Jiff. I'm not sure if it's Jiff or Giff. Is it Jiff or Giff? The coach there for the Chargers, that they're going to ride him, basically. Okay. But, like, he still has to, like, do it. And Eckler's been bad for a while now. Bobby, you got anything as far as this incentive stuff? Is it mostly nonsense?
I think there's some stuff that's tangible. Like I like the Hopkins thing. I think is very interesting, and people are just going to write off like Tannehill because he's Tannehill. But on this slate, if he's getting Hopkins needs 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards or something, like who knows? That could be a slate winning situation there if Tannehill's attached to Hopkins. So in larger field stuff, it's going to be a stack that I'm going to have. The Madison stuff, Khalif Raymond, like you just throw all that stuff out the window.
Yeah.
Hopkins needs 7 receptions and 49 receiving yards for $1.25 million. Jordan Love gets $500,000 if the Packers make the playoffs. I don't know how that's actionable. Like they're trying to win anyway, like whatever. Yeah, I think there are some thresholds for Baker Mayfield as well, not just winning, but some, passing stuff too. But again, I think he's going to be trying. All right. Try to see if there's anything else that's kind of worth, but I think Derrick Henry is sort of the sneaky one. If people are playing, and I'm not here to tout Derrick Henry, but like
it seems like you're about to.
Well, no. I want to throw it out there and get credit for it, but there's no way I'm actually putting my stamp on it. If that makes, this is the top 101.
It's like lizard people in our chat the other day.
What are
you're saying they existed?
I did not say that for the record. You must have been reading a different chat entirely. But like Henry's all but gone, right? Like he's been their guy for the last 6-7 years or so. I feel like they would want him to go out like and do something good. If you're gonna tell that story. I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I don't want to back Derrick Henry to the last game of the season. He's not a comfortable click, but it just to me it feels like if they want to get somebody a touchdown, like get Derrick Henry a touchdown. There's something about him retiring. I didn't see that. Donnie in chat talking about him retiring. I don't think that's happening, but he's, he might as well. If you're 28 years old as a running back, whatever he is, that's just how that goes sometimes. All right, let's pull up the cash game bill. Let's pull up the cash game bill. We'll have the conversation. This is normally Tim's territory. I did fill in at the last second, so you guys feel free to critique. I did not fill in a quarterback at cash. I feel like it depends. You can go all the way up or go all the way down. If you want the security, like you can pay Dak if you want to pay Dak. On FanDuel, I think you can play Josh Allen if you want to do that, if you have the salary. And again, you can find the salary. It's not hard. Optimizers are going to tell you to play Mullins or Fields, most likely. I'm a little nervous with the Mullins thing. Like this is like there's a non-zero chance he gets hooked at half. Dobbs may come in. Who knows? We'll see. But I'm a little bit uncomfortable with Minnesota, as far as their quarterback situation. And like, it just seems a little bit unnecessary. I am playing some cash games today. My laps are not set. Of course not. But I think there's some fragility to Mullins, and I'm not sure. Kyle, talk me into or out of Mullins or just your general take a quarterback. I assume, obviously, you have the salary, and we do look at the salary cap. You want Fields, you want Hurts, you want Dak, you want Josh Allen on FanDuel. Certainly, if you can. How do you feel about Mullins? And like Ty God's right there too. Like if you're really, really nervous about Mullins, you got Tyrod. Certainly, against Philadelphia, they want to spoil, Philadelphia. They'd love to do that. One of their big rivals. Quarterback wise, I don't think there's a definitive like this is the quarterback. That's why I didn't pick somebody. Do you have somebody you feel like this is the guy you want to make sure you get, or it's just sort of like whichever one falls to you, depending on a build?
Yeah, I think there are a couple that can sort of fall to you. I do think that just naturally with how much value you have at the running back spot, like it's just going to, be pay pretty much all the way down at running back because you have a lot of good value there. And then pay up at receiver, and then you actually end up still having enough to spend up at quarterback as well, thanks to Christian Kirk being there. I mean, again, it does sound like Christian Kirk's going to be a true game time decision, so that's something to monitor. But even if he is out, I don't know if there's guys who I feel as confident about that are cheap down there, but there are still plenty of other cheap options at the 3 to 3.5 range there at the receiver position. But I think the guy for me I prefer most in cash is probably going to be Justin Fields, either him or probably Dak Prescott. But if you are paying down, I think Mullins makes a lot of sense here. I would be pretty surprised if if they take him out. I feel like you get to a point where you just got to stop jerking the guy around, right? I mean, they bench him and then they bring him in for Hall last week. So I think they need to win this game. So it seems like this is the guy that they're rolling with, and he just threw for 400 yards against his team a couple weeks ago. He did also throw 4 picks in that game, but 400 yards is definitely going to be able to get the job done here at 5-1. But I think it's just a slate where you can definitely spend up at quarterback, and my favorite guy here is Fields.
You got a thought there, Bobby, as far as court? I don't know if you're dabbling in the cash game streets, but surely you have you can chime in and give it a good opinion on it.
Yeah, so I am playing some smaller field stuff this week. Just entered a bunch of stuff. For me, it would probably be between Fields and Dak. I like rushing equity. My issue with Fields is he struggled versus Green Bay in the past, so it's just a more difficult situation. It's at Green Bay. I like him. I don't love him. So Nick Mullins, I think, is someone that at 5-1, if you wanted to go there, or Tyrod at 5-3 versus Philly in the secondary, that's absolutely putrid. I think he's in play. But the guy that I think I prefer the most is getting up to Dak.
You mentioned at Green Bay. I think it's a good time to kind of mention Kevin Roth, chief meteorologist Kevin Roth, his weather article. And basically, there's only one game where weather is going to be an issue, unless this changes. It's 10 o'clock in the a.m. Weather is fluid, so this could it's dicey. It could change, and I would imagine he would update it. He's got everything else as green, right? But we have the Patriot game at orange. It looks like it's going to be an absolute disaster. Despite even it's somehow worse. The play of the field of the Jets and the Patriots. I think the total was around 30 last I looked. Is it still around? Is it still holding at 30?
Yeah, they're 29.5 actually. Yeah.
Well, looking out my window, I can assure you it's not going to be a nice day in New England.
How far how far are you from Foxborough? That's the outskirts of Boston, right?
I'm like 45 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Is that suburbs? Is that where that Foxborough is?
It's in the suburbs. I'm in the city. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it looks like it's going to be pretty miserable, and it's going to be hard for me to click on any offensive players. I'll take 11 defensively, but I don't think I'm going to be clicking on any of those offensive players. I know Hall is somebody that people might like, but that's going to be hard for me to get to. You mentioned it, Kyle. Running back wise, there's so much value at running back today, and there's some guesswork here, but it looks like, right? We're not certain how this is going to fall, but it looks like San Fran, we're going to have Mason be the lead guy for Cleveland. Looks like Pierre Strong's going to be the lead guy. I almost collect Zamir White as just put all 3 running backs in there. And this is the build. I didn't want to just say here, force it on the people, because here's 3 running backs you're supposed to play in cash, but I think these are the 3 running backs you play in cash. Yeah. And also general thoughts. It's much easier to just plug in, running backs don't matter. Plug in a running back off the street and they can run behind this line. They can run behind the scheme, as opposed to a receiver running routes. I just feel much better as far as cheap running back when it comes to cheap receiver. It's just a cheap receiver that gets elevated off the practice squad or whatever, elevated from 3 or 4 to 1 or 2. That's just sort of that's my feel on that. We'll have that conversation. But yeah, Kyle, is this where you're at cash wise? Is this where everybody's at cash wise? Just gonna these 2 cheapies, save some salary, spend some up money at the receiver, and move on. And it's the old show me. So come and catch me. This is what I'm doing. If you're doing the same thing, so be it. But this is what you probably should be doing, playing these cheap running backs.
Yeah, I agree. I will say from a projection standpoint, I think both those guys, obviously, they project really well. I will say, though, from a volatility of the projection standpoint, week 18, I like to think that we've done a good job all year, but week 18, definitely more volatility. And inactives are going to be a big part of that, right? For San Francisco, we already know that CMC is going to be inactive, but there's still question marks, for Cleveland. It doesn't sound like Ford and Hunt will be inactive. It sounds like they're not going to play much.
Okay.
But we don't necessarily know because they haven't called anybody up in the practice squad. So it sounds like they might be active, but only playing in an emergency spot, similar to how Pacheco's going to sort of have that role where he's going to be likely active, but probably not going to play unless an emergency role. But for example, we were sort of thinking that for Baltimore yesterday, and it turns out, Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, who are going to be, leading that backfield come playoff time, unless Dalvin Cook somehow ends up, being the lead back there. They ended up playing the majority of the game, right? So there's some volatility, I would say, with the strong projection, and that's why we have Mason and Zamir White tagged as the core plays to the running backs here, but.
Okay.
I still think Strong's a really strong play, no pun intended there, but I would say there's probably a little bit more volatility. I feel a little bit safer about assuming Mason and White are going to be the number ones there. But if Strong does roll out there and he's the number one guy, he's probably the best value play on the slate.
I don't think Matt Smith in chat realizes we're talking from a cash game perspective. Just to throw that out.
Oh no, I think he does, but he's saying I'm wrong. And again, I made it very clear. We don't know, and it's the information/misinformation slate. And you got to keep your ears to like the reports on Twitter and actives and inactives. As we stand right now, 10 o'clock in the a.m., it appears that Pierre Strong will be the lead guy. Now, that may change, and Kyle made an interesting case of how that turns out. I think it would be kind of silly for Cleveland to play a bunch of Ford and a bunch of Hunt. And that, doesn't make a lot of sense. We'll see. Wait for the reports. And he's saying we're guessing. Yeah, there is some guesswork being told by touts. There a go. And okay, I don't know who. Nobody told me. But it just, yeah. He says you're all wrong. So wait, we're guessing, but Matt knows is what's happening, right? Matt knows, but we're all guessing. Okay,
Matt, just give us your take in chat.
Tell us the answer. Tell
us the answer.
Give us the answer.
He said they could both, Cleveland and San Francisco could both use 3 running backs today, which is definitely true.
I think, which we hit on.
Yeah.
We didn't say that this is Pierre Strong season. I don't understand that, again, this is a fluid conversation. We don't know. I
want to hit on this running back situation.
Yes.
So basically for me, I really like Ronnie Rivers at 4K. If you see him basically stepping into a role that is Kyron-esque, I feel like there's a little bit less volatility to him than there would be to these other guys. So a guy like Rivers, I have a good bit of interest in as pivots. I think you definitely have to make rules in tournaments on how you're going to play these chalk situations. We talked about, you basically fall in this build of paying up for Jefferson, paying up for Lamb. I would probably at most one of Pierre Strong or Jordan Mason. Just these guys that we are showing the ownership, and I think it's a way to kind of be different, or at most one Christian Kirk, Johnny Munt, etc. If we think Johnny Munt's going to be the tight end. I don't think it depends on how your construction's going. I would probably rather get up to McBride a tight end in cash, but
ideally, just a salary thing.
Yeah. I think that's the way this build pushes you, but
we'll talk about that. I feel, I guess we'll put that conversation on hold, but I kind of think that I'd rather have Bryant for Cleveland, maybe. I'd rather have Noah Gray, I think, if we can just get Kelsey out of the way and just, give him his 16 yards and let him move on. And the other tricky part is maybe Kansas City values Noah Gray and it's all of a sudden Blake Bell season. And again, I don't know. I wish I did. I don't know that for sure. You mentioned Ronnie Rivers. There's also Royce Freeman there. He's a vet. I don't know how much they need to see that Royce Freeman, but I don't know what the split will be. Zach Evans is another person who might potentially run the ball for the Rams. That is a late game, and maybe the later the game, the more likely you are to get information. So maybe backloading as a default or as a tiebreaker. If you don't have the information, just play somebody later, and maybe more stuff will come out. Is that something you thought about, Bobby? Because again, 6 early, 7 late. We haven't seen this set up all season long. A pile of late games. And the Rams traditionally, right, they like to run their one running back, but this is not a traditional game. It's week 18. And the game against San Fran, it's kind of like a preseason game, right? Wentz versus Darnold and a bunch of backups on both sides. Neither team really motivated. I don't know. But Ronnie Rivers can certainly have 25 touches. That's possible.
I have weird interest in this game. If we're just gonna kind of hop in I think it does give you do get the information. I like Davis Allen at the tight end position. We've seen him ball out versus Baltimore a couple weeks back. And Carson Wentz, I know this is very at 4.5 or 4.6 or whatever, 4.8, whatever his price tag is, like we've
4.5.
4.5. It's a very cheap stack of Rivers, Allen, and Carson Wentz for larger field stuff. Just throwing it out there. And I think Ronnie Bell's an interesting run back too on the San Fran side. I know this is the type of week we're dealing with, but if you play that build, you can get almost 4 studs in your lineup. You can get Chase, CD, Jefferson.
Is there 4 studs on the slate? Like, there's not like these 4 or 5 guys where it's like, these are amazing plays. And certainly they're good plays, and we'll talk about it. But you can kind of poke holes in everything. We can poke holes in CeeDee Lamb because at some point, theoretically, Dallas is going to be ahead on Washington. They're just going to kind of pump the brakes. One of Lamb's worst games this season was against Washington. Again, that's probably an outlier game. We know the matchup against Washington is spectacular. Dallas does want to win, and if they score too many points where they have to pull Lamb off the field, well, how do they score those points? Probably Lamb, possibly Lamb, not necessarily, but very likely. He had a pretty good game. Let's speaking of Lamb, we have Lamb and Jefferson since we're spending down at running back here. And again, Kyle, I think it's worth noting as far as the Strong situation. And if more stuff trickles on through and Strong is not going to be a feature back, then you don't play him in cash. I think it's as simple as that. The information could change. And the information could be wrong or bad information, but we're going to do our best to kind of splice through it. But we have the salary to spend up on Jefferson and Lamb. Is that our thought in cash games, Kyle? Do you feel like you have to have both? If you can only have one, who do you prefer?
I don't know if you need to have both. I think it's just the way you're just naturally building lineups with these cheap running backs. Like if you are, especially if you're building lineup with the projections, because, I do think that the most likely outcome is that Strong is the guy and Mason is the guy there, but when, like you said, poking holes and things there, that's kind of the case for Strong specifically. But when you're using those guys, you're just naturally going to sort of have a lot of money at receiver position. And that just also happens to be where the higher projected flex plays are. And, Jefferson and Lamb, I think are. So I don't think you need to have them, but I think they just make the most sense right now. If I had to pick one of them, I would actually prefer Jefferson here. $800 cheaper, like him a little bit more. I do think that Lamb maybe you feel a little bit safer about just because of the the quarterback situation is a bit better, higher implied team total. But I think Jefferson has a really high ceiling here, and the $800 discount is not bad either. So I will go with Jefferson slightly over Lamb, but I think they're both spectacular.
The hole that I would poke in Jefferson is like any sort of ding to him, he's out, right? They have 3% chance to make the playoffs mathematically. I guess they're still alive, at least according to the New York Times thing I pulled up here that gives the percentage of chances to make the playoffs. 3% for Minnesota. They would make it 8 and 9 if they win this game. And we've seen him leave games before, like not too long ago. He left the game and he didn't come back. Again, I'm just sort of poking a hole. It's great matchup against Detroit in the Dome. Good run back. If you're playing some Detroit stuff, you think Detroit is going to play full out, which it seems like that's going to be the case, at least for a good chunk of the game. What do you got in this, Bobby? You kind of already said you're coming at it from a tournament brain. You mentioned Addison, the other receiver from Minnesota as a tournament play, which looks, I think that's a spectacular move. Your thoughts as far as these receivers up top. You were mentioning 4 studs. I'm assuming you think Lamb and Jefferson are 2 studs on the slate. You have a priority one over the other?
I just wanted to pull up what my team that I had up there. Yeah, so I prefer Lamb and Dak. I just think they're guys I want to get to. In that game that Lamb busted versus Washington, Dak was really trying to get it downfield as much as possible, and for whatever reason, Lamb just kind of ran bad in that situation. I think it was Cooks who caught the deep ball for a touchdown. So I like Lamb. Jefferson, and that's why I do like Addison. I think Addison is at 5.3. That's obviously not Justin Jefferson, but he's in a range that I think is going to be relatively chalky, and he's just going to be kind of lost in the shuffle. In terms of guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Lockett, there's a bunch of different guys like in that upper 5 to 6 range at the wide receiver position. and most people aren't going to get to Addison because Jefferson's there. Amon-Ra and A.J. Brown, I think, are very good tournament plays. Like A.J. Brown, no Devontae Smith. Going up against this Giants secondary, it's condensed, which we love. So I like him a good bit. Amon-Ra, same thing. Like people let them kind of figure out Detroit. Like, do you want to play him or do you not want to play him? I think Chase is interesting too. There was a report that Burrow wants to play in the playoffs. Cleveland's sitting a lot of their starters on defense. Chase at 7-2 is another guy that I think that probably should be in your player pool this week, and he's at 7-2. So,
wait, you said Burrow wants to play in the playoffs? Joe Burrow?
Joe Burrow, yeah.
They're not in the playoffs, the Bengals. Who's he playing for? Joe Burrow?
The Bengals
are out.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry. I read that incorrectly.
No worries.
Where did I read that? What? The misinformation slate. Yeah, I don't know. Chase, I like Chase. So that's it. That wasn't my thesis. I just think Chase at 7-2, and you've paid upwards of $9K for him at points. Like, I don't mind Chase.
All right. Anything else we should talk about as far as cash games? Tight end, like it's all the way up or all the way down, most likely. You got to take in that, Kyle. I didn't like commit to one. If you have all the salary in the world, I assume you want to play dude in Arizona. He's just been spectacular. Trey McBride. He's eked his way up as far as salary, but salary is a thing, and also opportunity cost at tight end might be really minimal. If you just kind of look at the tight ends, who's really going to break me if I don't have them? And this is why I think you can get away with like the 2.5K guy. Our biggest tight end projection of the day is Trey McBride at a median projection of about 14, 15 points on DK. Ingram around 12, motivated Jacksonville team. Sam Laporta. But wasn't Laporta like dinged? Like if he's at all dinged, why would he play this game? But I know he's limited in practice this week. Dallas Goedert, Philadelphia motivated, but Philadelphia is, motivated as long as the Cowboys are close with Washington, and that game's going on the same time. I'd imagine there's some scoreboard watching, and if Dallas is ahead big, maybe Philadelphia pulls their players because there will be no longer a point to keep going. Yeah, Kyle, what do you got as far as tight end? I didn't run through the cheapies. I was just talking about the guys up top, but it's not a spectacular pool up top. Not a big opportunity cost. The point I was kind of getting at there. But what's your read at tight end for cash?
Yeah, I mean, so at the top of it, you kind of mentioned, either pay all the way up or pay down. Obviously, paying up, Trey McBride would be the guy. I guess depending on what you think the price of Gerald Everett is, if that's all the way down, I guess I could potentially disagree with that because I think Everett's a really strong cash play, but he is still cheap. 3.9 there. He's got 8+ targets, and I think 4 or 5 straight games. Some of the games, with those targets hasn't been anything exciting because Easton Stick is still Easton Stick, but the volume's definitely there for a guy who's 3.9, and obviously nothing has really changed with their setup. So you're still expecting a lot of volume there for Everett. So I think I like him or McBride as the cash game options. But you mentioned Laporta. He actually has some rookie records that he could potentially set, and that might be a spot where maybe he trots out. I think it's like one catch to break a rookie tight end receiving receptions record. So maybe he has one catch and then he's done if he is banged up. But it sounds like he's mostly fine from that injury that he was kind of dealing with at the end of that game on Saturday last week. But I think for me the two cash guys are Everett and McBride, and then the other two cheapies that make sense are Harrison Bryant, Munt, and then even you can throw Davis Allen in there as well as the punt cash options.
You mentioned the Laporta thing. If you're playing some Lions today, right? If you're just saying screw it, I trust the coach. If you're going to prioritize the Lions, and based upon the thing you're just kind of mentioning there as far as Laporta, is he the one that might be the most fragile, amongst Amon-Ra, Gibbs, Montgomery, Goff? Is he the one that like you might feel the most queasy about potentially getting out of the game, just getting his record and then moving on, taking his helmet off and chilling?
Potentially, if you are maybe buying into that, maybe the injury is a little bit more serious than what we were seeing on the injury report all week, because it didn't really seem like it was that big of a deal.
Okay.
So maybe that. Otherwise, I would actually say Gibbs is probably the most fragile because I think it's easy just to get him off the field more.
All right, Bobby, you got anything as far as tight ends from a cash perspective? We'll talk tournaments obviously soon enough, but figure you have a thought on this. You mentioned Munt earlier. Is he your favorite cheap tight end ahead of Harrison Bryant ahead of Gray for Kansas City?
He would probably be my favorite cheap tight end. I think a good tournament tight end is Davis Allen. McBride would be the guy that I'm trying to get to in cash games, though, for sure. I think Gerald Everett's in play, just because Easton Stick's targeting him at a very high rate, but he just doesn't really have a ceiling. Yeah, McBride would be definitely my favorite, though, in that Seattle-Arizona game.
Well, if you settled for tournaments, that's our cash conversation. Let's talk about some tournaments. Again, chat, please join the conversation. Tell us if you think we're wrong about something. By all means, happy to hear that. Happy to have the discourse. But yeah, Bobby, you tend to whittle down your quarterback pool. It's a 13-gamer, 26 quarterbacks starting today. Have you whittled it down? Are we down to 5, 6? What are we at as far as quarterbacks? So there's some you're definitively saying this. There for me, there's a whole bunch. Like I'm just not playing those guys basically. You tell me, like, what is our pool sitting at right now as far as quarterbacks you're willing to roster today?
Yeah, it's actually for like larger field stuff. It's definitely the pool's a bit larger than what it is usually for whatever reason. I just think there are guys like Ryan Tannehill, like Carson Wentz that are, I think, in play for large field stuff, but like guys that they're like 4 or 5% owned, that they're going to be 1% owned. You get 5%, you're overweight. For me, like the main guys would be Dak Prescott, Geno Smith. I think Nick Mullins is definitely in the mix. Jalen Hurts, I have a good bit of. So yeah, those are like the 4 main guys, or the guy, or like Justin Fields, just like the regular guys that you're going to pay up for every week.
I'm waiting to get an update as far as ownership. We'll get one obviously soon enough, and we'll get it several times. And again, speaking of a tough task, it's going to be tough to get ownership as correct as possible today. Just with all the moving parts that are going to be incoming and dropping probably 11:30 with all and also later on in the slate. But the team's going to do their best. But currently, we're looking at this is 3:00 in the morning, right? Again, this will change, but 15% Nick Mullins, which to me that's just a little uncomfortable. If he's the most popular quarterback on the slate, you never really worry about ownership when it kind of comes to quarterbacks, really, just because the number can only be so high. Kyle Dak is at 14%, Fields at 10, Geno at 10, Seattle motivated to win. Hurts. Let's talk about the Hurts thing, because Kyle, Philadelphia, right? They want to win, but they can't do anything because they blew that game versus Arizona last week, and Dallas beats Washington, and that's that. They're just relegated to, I guess, the 5 spot or whatever it is. They can't move up if Dallas wins, and Dallas should win. How concerned are we about the Philadelphia situation that maybe they don't see, the third or fourth quarter, or at least the fourth quarter, if they're looking at the scoreboard and see Dallas is up by, 3-4 touchdowns on Washington?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you actually have to worry about 2 game scripts. Like, if Philly somehow is in a spot where it's a good game script for Jalen Hurts, that's great. But if Dallas is up 20 going into the third quarter, or midway through the third, they're probably going to sit those guys down, I would assume, because unlike the Lions, they played before those 2 teams that they're kind of monitoring. So it kind of gives me a little bit more hope that the Lions are actually going to play those starters, because they don't have the option to watch those other 2 teams that are impacting their spot. But yeah, and with the spread being so wide there for the Dallas Washington game, 13.5 or 14, I think it is, the game could get out of hand quick, and Philly could throw in the towel a little bit earlier than you'd really hoped for. But it's still an outcome that could potentially happen where maybe Dallas loses or the game's close and Philly plays their guys the whole way through, and it's a good matchup. So they're definitely still in play for tournaments for sure, but there's a lot of risk.
Trying to find a line for any Philadelphia Eagles in the sports books. I was pulling up scores and odds here, Kyle. Is there just nothing out there on the Eagles? Am I missing it? Is it not updated here at scores and odds? Is Vegas scared?
Yeah, they haven't had anything up all morning. I haven't checked since we started the show, but I think maybe the DeAndre Swift potential news is impacting it, maybe, but also it might just be a spot where they're scared to put some numbers up here.
By the way, speaking of that, do you have anything? I know you're right for the scores and odds. You're always throwing stuff up there. I see your picks. Anything you want to tell the people? Anything that hasn't gotten stale? Anything that hasn't expired on us? It still looks pretty strong today.
Yeah, we were talking Trey McBride. I like his over 5.5 receptions. And then Kenneth Walker is also one of my favorite tournament plays today, over 59.5 rushing yards. I think those are probably my two favorite props right now.
Walker scares me a little bit with that. Is it a shoulder he keeps kind of like nursing?
Yeah.
He's going through it, right? He's playing through it, but yeah, I'm not trying to speak negative of it. And good for him for playing through it. I hate betting overs on guys that might not be 100%, but this game is meaningful for Seattle. What is their official chances according to 21% chance to make the playoffs? And I don't think they would know until after their game or like simultaneously. I'm not sure what they're rooting for or against, to be honest. But they know they got to win. That seems like it'll be a pretty fun game. Seattle, Arizona. We'll get to that in a second. It's one of my favorite games on the board. But I think it's also like the field, one of their favorite games too. Kyle, what are you doing quarterback wise? And what do you run? Do you run like 150? You run one main lineup? You a single entry guy? What's your general the games you tend to enter on a weekly basis? What are you entering today, I guess, and how you handle that as far as quarterbacks?
Yeah, real quick to answer the Seahawks question, they have to rely on the Packers to lose. Both teams play at 425, so both those teams are just going to, be, going 100% the whole way through. This week, I'm actually not doing 150 this week. I normally do, but not 150 this week. Just sticking to, single entry and 3 max type builds. I just, like building, a little bit more hand builds this week is what I'm preferring with all the craziness for news and whatnot.
You're going old school. There you go.
Yeah, throwing it back.
Take down the red zone, or there you go, the $100 single entry on DK or something like that. Fun contest for sure. All right, let's see. Let's talk about it. Favorite games. You have a favorite game stacks. I kind of alluded to the Seattle Arizona one. Arizona, like theoretically, nothing to play for, but they can finish strong, right? They could have rolled over against Philadelphia last week. They didn't. They didn't have to bring Kyler Murray back. We brought Kyle Murray back. You were here like 8 weeks ago or so. Yeah. We do appreciate you jumping on. But I think Arizona is just going to go for it and play it out, despite the fact that Tankathon says they probably shouldn't. But I think Arizona is going to try, from what I can tell. Is that one of the better games? Seattle versus Arizona in a dome. Two good defenses to pick on. Two pretty solid. Pretty clear who the players you want. McBride knocks out the tight end spot. Seattle, it's a little tricky with their receivers, figuring out which one of the three. But yeah, I'm just going to throw that. Your thoughts on that one, Kyle, and just any other game you want to enter into like the game stack conversation that's just jumping out for you.
Yeah, I like that Seattle game quite a bit. It sounds like Arizona's going to, give it their best shot there. It's a 3-point spread. So that tells me that Vegas agrees with that. And Arizona being at home, obviously. And then another 4:00 game, Chicago, Green Bay. I like that game quite a bit as well. I like both sides, the field stack and the love stack. Big fan of Aaron Jones today as well. Chicago's been really susceptible to running backs out of the backfield lately, and then obviously no A.J. Dillon there. So I would say those are probably my two favorite games right now. But yeah, Seattle, I mentioned Kenneth Walker. I like Tyler Lockett quite a bit. Obviously Trey McBride. I think you can play Kyler as well, and then Chicago, Green Bay is one of my favorite game stacks of the day as well.
I did bet over on Aaron Jones. I think it was like 16.5 or 17.5 receiving yards.
I like that.
It just sort of like, who knows, the receiving core there for Green Bay, it's kind of uncertain, right? We currently, I think we're projecting Watson, Reed, Dobbs, Wicks all in, but yeah, they're all probably not 100%, and we'll see. That's a late game as far as news on that. Very quiet, by the way, on the Twitter. I'm keeping an eye on Twitter, looking for news. And like not much is out there. Nothing really popping up that's kind of caught my eye. But if something does, for sure, I want to share it. Jump in here, Bobby. Some of your favorite games, game stacks. What's catching your eye on this 13 gamer?
Yeah, so it looks like Sims around the industry really like Seattle, Arizona. I just worry about there's a lot of situations that are super condensed on the slate, and I'd rather get to those situations rather than Seattle's passing attack with Geno, Tyler Lockett, Metcalf, JSN. Yeah, they're great plays. That's why I really liked the Walker play. Just worry about Walker and his health. I know he got dinged up last week. Yeah, so for me, I think I'm going to be a little bit under on Geno, even though I want to play these guys. I just don't feel comfortable because, like I said, I feel like there's better situations where the usage is more condensed. On the Arizona side, I really like James Conner. I think he's in an interesting price range where he's in like Zamir White. There's just want to pull between like Joe Mixon's there at 6'3", Pollard's there at 6'5". Like these are guys we're going to be targeting. Aaron Jones at 6'3". But James Conner for me seems like a really good play. It does seem like Arizona wants to battle it out. They've kind of battled it out with teams all season. So I think they'll probably finish strong. And it looks like they'll be trailing in this game. It should be a tight spread. Connor's very game script dependent, but I don't really care. I'm going to be playing some Connor. I think I'd prefer him to Walker in this game. But yeah, that's my thought process on Seattle and Arizona game stack. Like I said, like I'm going to be targeting Eagles. I'm going to be targeting Dallas because it's like AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, Dak, Lamb, Pollard. You know what I mean? It's very easy.
So you're not afraid of the scenario of Dallas being up big and Philadelphia resting their guys, or you're just like, hey, screw it. If that's what happens, I lose. Whatever. But like
that's what happens. Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty much my thought process. Yeah, Tannehill, Hopkins, I think is interesting. Like I said, I don't know how I like Carson Wentz. I like Rivers. I like Davis Allen. Like Puka comes out after he gets the 42. There's not really much there afterwards, right? Like
I think Atwell's the best option.
Atwell, you can throw in the mix. Carson Wentz has traditionally really favored his tight ends, though, so that's like my sneaky GPP stack. I think Rivers is good leverage off these other chalk running backs. I think Rivers could actually be a good player in this league eventually.
Good name. Yeah. He's got a good name.
Yeah, Ronnie Rivers. It's a good name, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
Baker, Evans, Rashad White. Like, Evans kills cover 3. Carolina plays a ton of cover 3. There's I'm not like forcing game stacks. I never really have forced game stacks, but yeah. Green Bay, Chicago, I just worry. So I like DJ Moore. I don't love Justin Fields as much as everyone else. Like, traditionally has had some pretty bad games versus Green Bay. I'm not worried about Jair Alexander being back for DJ Moore. I don't think Jair Alexander is really that good. I know he held him to 2 catches in like week 2, but they were just kind of getting acclimated, Fields and Moore at that point. So I don't know. I could prefer. I would just prefer Moore and kind of being under on field stacks. I'm just trying to think through anyone else like Detroit, Goff, Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Gibbs for larger field. I think that makes sense. Yeah, those are pretty much my stacks.
I remember on my the Pick 6 show we do on Wednesday with Rebar and Daigle. Rebar kind of laid out how, like you said, he's much more hand of the dirt guy than any of us. I know you're the hand of the dirt guy here. I don't know, maybe Kyle challenges that. I'm not really sure how much Kyle puts his hand in the dirt.
Kyle seems like he challenges that.
Kyle, you take umbrage? Do you want to be? Are you going to dethrone?
Kyle's a sharp guy, projection guy, hand in the dirt guy. Yeah. I know you're trying to besmirch hand in the dirt guys, Dean, but we'll rally around you. We have to come to Florida and wedgie you. We will.
How deep is your hand in the dirt, Kyle? If you can measure that.
I would say moderately at best.
Fair enough. But like Rebar was the point I was making is that Rebar was kind of laying out. I think you kind of alluded to it as well. That historically he's not done spectacular against Green Bay. Historically he's not done great against whatever Green Bay's scheme is. Now, does that mean I'm not going to play? And he's not saying you can't play him, but maybe it's a little bit trickier for him. Maybe the path is a little bit tougher. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Of course, he can break a 50-yard, 50-yard on the ground. And who cares what the hand in the dirt says? And the Bears, it's a really tricky situation with them because everybody has an opinion on if they should sign Fields, if they should trade Fields, what they should do. And this game might decide what they do. Who knows? I feel like they still haven't figured out what their opinion is. They're still debating it. I guess there's no reason to derail the show and get into what I think. But they would love to stick it. If nothing else, they want to stick it to the Packers. They don't like the Packers. They want to stick it to the Packers. And the Packers want to win because they want to make the playoffs. And the Bears would love to keep them out. This is basically their Super Bowl. Let's see. What else? I see some other things being thrown out in chat. And by all means, throw some stuff out in chat too, because we're here for the next half hour or so until we yield to Erik Beimfohr. We got SquirrelPatrol as well. Brandon wants to know. Oh, go ahead.
So We haven't talked. Obviously, Christian Kirk, if he plays, is going to be super chalky. Do you guys have thoughts on Lawrence? I really like Calvin Ridley. I think it's a strong matchup. I just don't know. Like, I don't want to play Lawrence, but
he doesn't feel like he's 100%. Like, that's such a lazy take, but like, it just doesn't feel like he's 100%. I compared it to the old Monty Python skit, like the guy, like just a flesh wound hopping on one leg. But he's going to play, but like, he doesn't seem like he's and he's played through most things, right? Didn't he have that streak of never missing a game back to high school or something like that? I am concerned. I love the Ridley play. I think that's an incredible tournament play, especially if everybody's playing Kirk. Now, I think it's just worth noting Kirk is officially questionable. And if he doesn't go, like people are going to be in scramble mode when it comes to the receivers, because we got to find another, unless you're going to just change your build-up for cash. We got to find another 3K cheapy type receiver. Kyle, your thoughts as far as the Jags, and what if Kirk is in? What are you doing with Kirk? And what if he's out? Because Kirk might also not be 100%. Why would he be? He tore his entire groin, right? Yeah. He has been practicing, in limited practice. It's an important game for Jacksonville. Maybe he'll try to gut it out as best he can. I don't know what to do with him, because he's 4K on FanDuel. 4K receiver that's alive on FanDuel is really meaningful, and a 3K receiver on DK. So people are going to play him if he's like suiting up. But this is where news matters, and we don't have it yet. What do you got here, Kyle?
Yeah, I would say, just to play devil's advocate, obviously if Christian Kirk plays, he's probably $3,000 too cheap on DraftKings. He's probably a 6K player. He has been at least over the last year and a half or so. Maybe 5.5, whatever. Either way, obviously massive discount. But, it is that time of year where these guys, if they can play and they need to win, they're going to play. I mean, we saw with Jonathan Taylor last night, right? He was doubtful to return. He gutted out, came back in, but on that last play of the game, he wasn't able to be on that. Maybe it was that play, whatever it was, that design.
Yeah.
It could easily be a spot where Christian Kirk's going to play because of the fact that it's the last game of the year potentially, and it's a must win, but maybe he plays 20% of snaps, whatever it is. Again, that's a lot of speculation, but that's just, I guess, the tournament narrative to maybe fading him there. And if he's out, I think that people probably don't pivot to Ridley or Zay Jones. I think they probably look for another cheap 3K guy, so that now you're looking at Ridley and Zay Jones, whose projections would be better, and the ownership wouldn't really change at all. So I think both those guys would be, pretty strong tournament plays. Probably whether or not Kirk is in or out, but especially if Kirk is out, because then you're just taking away those targets, allocating a lot of those to those two, and I don't think the ownership will change. So that's one thing that I'm definitely keeping an eye on. And then if you are, wanting to, get off of Kirk, or maybe looking for another 3K guy, I think you probably look at Kansas City. There's a couple of guys there. San Francisco, I prefer Ronnie Bell from San Francisco. Richie James from Kansas City. Those guys make some sense. And yeah, you can look down there if you so choose. But I think if Kirk's out, I'll probably look to spend up a little bit more, or maybe just pivot to Ronnie Bell.
Zay Jones, 3.8 there for Jacksonville. I think Ridley would be phenomenal. Obviously, that would change your build up. If Mahomes can't get it done for Richie James, of course Blaine Gabbert can get it done for Richie James and Justin Watson and Ross and those guys. I get it. Do you have any 3K receivers you like more than the field here, Bobby? I guess you kind of mentioned a couple already. It sounds like you like the guys in the Rams-Niners game. I think you mentioned Ronnie Bell and Atwell. Anybody else that you want to add to the pool of like 3K cheapies, 3-ish? You can go to 4 if you want to.
Yeah, I like Darius Slayton. He's incentivized, I think 42 yards, 5 catches for money for him, 200K. If you think that's something valuable to him, I like him a good bit. I like Jalen Hyatt in that Eagles game too. I think he's in a good spot. Kyle hit on Ronnie Bell. I like him a lot. Who was the other one for KC? Ray McLeod, was it? Or no?
McLeod's on the Niners. You're probably thinking of.
Yeah.
Watson, James, Ross, Harpin.
The old Giants receiver who was there. Kyle hit his name.
Richie James?
Richie James. Yeah, he's more of a slot guy. Yeah, that's pretty much. I don't really have a ton of like 3Ks, because I was like, if Kirk plays, like the biggest decision is what you do with Kirk at 3K.
Where are you at on that?
I'm going to be overweight if he plays. It's a bad matchup. Tennessee's been very good versus the slot receiver, very bad against the outside receiver, but I don't know. I I think at 3K you just play him. I do worry about the groin injury for what it's worth, but I think I'm just going to be over on that.
We just got an update, by the way, on the old lineup HQ. So feel free to give it a refresh, an update as far as ownership, an update as far as projections. So we got the first update of the day. More will be incoming. Didn't mean to cut you off there, Bobby. Continue your thoughts.
No, it's good. I don't really have a ton of these cheap receivers, like cheap running backs, the ones we named for the receiver position, and then I don't know. That would pretty much be like JSN at 4.8. I think is definitely interesting. No one's going to play. He's showing very little ownership across the industry. He's around 5K though. Those are all the receivers I got, Dean.
We got SquirrelPatrol coming on later. One of the best shows that I like listening to on a weekly basis, a Squirrel Show with JM to Win. It was kind of single entry based, but like they would kind of, talk about the slate as well. And JM was talking about like Seattle just never really seems to get there unless they're absolutely forced to like throw the ball, but they otherwise like you never really have guys to sort of break the slate. I thought that was an interesting thought. Doesn't mean like it can't happen, but doesn't happen very often where like, Metcalf or Lockett or JSN, just kind of the way their philosophy of the team, the philosophy of Carroll. But maybe this is a spot where they overcome. But I generally don't like Seattle guys when they're going to be popular, but I also like the Seattle spot. Our boy Broccoli Boy in chats, I'm not sure if he's trolling or not, but he's asking about little Jordan Humphrey. I think we did call him last week. I did have a bunch of him in my lineups. He broke free. He got like a 70-yard touchdown. Got really lucky because the tackling was horrendous. I'm not playing little Jordan Humphrey. At least that's the plan right now. And I'm not playing anybody on Denver because I'm buying into like the Raiders are getting up to play for Pierce. I think this line's be bigger than 3 points. I like the Raiders. I like the Raiders defense. I bet the Raiders to win this game, which is an uncomfortable sentence, but that's where I'm at. They're rallying around Pierce. They want to get him a W going into the offseason. They want him to get extended. And the Broncos are just, when have you ever said, man, I wish I played more Broncos this week, the entire season? If you said that once, I don't think so. Maybe once. Hopefully not this week. Kyle, your thoughts here. I love, we don't talk a lot of defense. I know Bobby loves his defense, but the Raiders are one of my favorite defensive units that I'll be playing a fair bit of. You like the Broncos at all? Is there some teams you're just like Xing out? Because I think I'm Xing out the Broncos.
Yeah. Honestly, there's probably a handful of teams I'm Xing out. Probably Xing out the game out there in Foxborough, Jets and Patriots. Definitely Denver as well. No interest in anyone there. Little Jordan Humphrey, not quite the same scenario either with Mims returning. I guess the one guy maybe you have some regrets on was Courtland Sutton. He had a stretch where he was pretty good. But other than that, you've been probably fine just not playing Denver at all. Atlanta and New Orleans, other than Olave, probably not having a lot from that game either. So you probably pick at that game, but for the most part, not thrilled with that one. And then probably not playing anyone from Carolina. So there's a few teams that you can definitely cross off or at least really lower your interest in. But yeah, Denver's definitely going to be on that list for me.
You got any teams you're Xing out, Bobby? Like you can just sort of eyeball it and say I'm not playing anybody from that team. Like I know, whatever. If one or two sprinkle in and you're 150, you're running a bunch of lineups. Who cares? Then we're not going to hold you to it. But any teams you basically have minimal to no interest on.
Probably Denver, like Kyle, and just looking through. Washington, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I should want some pushback with Washington.
You just never know what's going to be on Washington. There's not like one person that gets a ton of, balls coming his way.
Curtis Samuel had a pretty good game versus him last time, so maybe Curtis Samuel would be the only Washington. 4,300, yeah.
You mentioned that Atlanta New Orleans game, and I always look. One of the things I always look at is the blitz. Cardi's the blitz. The game level factors as far as pace, expected plays. That game is expected to have 140.2 game plays, right? And what does that mean? It's projected, there's 13 games. It's projected to have 6 plays more than the second fastest game. And it's in a dome. I feel like we should probably, I don't like messing with Atlanta because we know the issues with Atlanta. The Bijan stuff, I think people are just done with. We don't know about Kamara, right? Do we have news on Kamara if he's going to play or not? Last I saw, he's questionable.
Yeah, it sounds like real questionable. I think, yeah, we ruled him out in the projections for now, at least, obviously pending official reports. But yeah, it does not sound good.
So Jamal Williams could be kind of sort of somewhat interesting, right? I know the rookie Hunter, what's his
Kendre Miller.
Miller, yeah. We haven't seen him for a while, really, but he's been injured basically all season long, in and out. Do we have Jamal Williams projected? Okay, I know Olave looks pretty good as well, and 42 total. Like, again, if we're gonna get a ton of plays in this game, Drake London's 5K on DK. Juwan Johnson had a big game last week. I'm not sure if that's Chasey or not. We kind of touched on tight ends, and he's sort of right there with Gerald Everett as far as asking price. Taysom Hill might be just hurt because they're not really giving him the ball much anymore, just kind of gutting it out. What's our read here, Kyle? This just feels like kind of a sneaky game, especially if we think it's going to play really fast and a lot of plays. The more plays, the more opportunity. I know it's Heineke and Derek Carr, so, temper a little bit. Yeah. But, it feels like it's neglected a little bit too much.
Yeah, obviously Cardi's got a great system over there, but I will say Atlanta, they've just been sucking the air out of the ball, and it's just brutal. Like that. I just feel like they're trying to end the game as fast as possible as soon as the game starts, and they're just trying to not lose or not embarrass themselves, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that's not a game that I like a ton of. Jamal Williams, I don't think that I'll have any of him. I just think that he's in a price point where he's a little bit more expensive than some of the really good value guys, and he's a little bit cheaper than some what I like, these mid-range plays, guys like Aaron Jones, Kenneth Walker, Zamir White, who I think is one of the better players in the slate. Tony Pollard's in that range, so no Jamal Williams for me. Obviously, you're gonna have to monitor that news. Kamara might even play, and then obviously Kendre Miller, we don't even know about him. He's actually been added to the injury report again with an illness. I think it was. I think he was a healthy scratch last week. He's been out with hamstrings or illnesses for the past 6 weeks. So if he's out, then maybe you feel a little bit better about Jamal Williams if Kamara is also out. But yeah, probably a game I'm not getting overly excited about.
You alluded to this earlier, by the way. I didn't realize it was an illness with Swift. Officially, DeAndre Swift has an illness, so we'll keep an eye on that. Some questions here in chat. Bobby, we have a construction question for you from Donnie for tournaments, Bobby. Do you think construction's is most important thing as far as the slate, paying up for running backs? Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thought because that is the way the construction's going, right? Paying up for receivers, paying down for running backs, avoiding the value 3K receivers, but maybe just kind of working in the middle. Do you have a thought on that as far as construction? I think you kind of alluded to it earlier, where I think you're going to only run out one of the two really chalky running backs, and the way it stands, I think, strong, and we'll see as far as the news. He was one of them earlier, and Mason for Sam Fran. I think you said you're only going to pay one of those two. That was the plan, at least. But yeah, how much are you prioritizing construction, right, as far as making your lineups today?
Yeah, it's at most one of those two for me currently, as everyone's projected. They seem to be the chalkier of the bunch of all these guys. Ronnie Rivers is a guy I'm going to be overweight on. Definitely. He's going to be my favorite to kind of leverage those guys, favorite play to leverage those guys. Christian Kirk, at 3K, I think is a huge decision point what you're doing there. Because if you play these, I would not play, if Christian Kirk's in, do not, at most two of Strong, Kirk, and Mason for sure of that group.
By the way, Kamara officially ruled out per Underhill. Underhill, the report is on Underdog. Underhill is one of their big beats there in New Orleans. So, yeah, Kamara, we talked about it. He's officially not going to play. Actives and actives come in for the early games at 11:30. Beimfohr and Squirrel, we'll talk about that. Jets expected to trade Zach Wilson this off. Oh, try to trade Zach Wilson. Good luck. I mean, okay. I mean, I'm going to try to win the Million Maker. I'm expected to try to win the Million Maker. We'll see if that happens or not. Actually, I like enter those. It's not for me. All right. Some more questions. Brian wants to know, Kyle, is it wild to just fade these crappy 4K running backs? Is that wild?
I don't know if it's wild. I think that you can easily just get different by maybe playing just one of them. I don't think you necessarily need to full fade them. Especially if you loop in a guy like Rivers as a tournament option. I think there are some other guys who you can play. You don't need to full fade that area, but yeah, you can definitely just like flip the build sort of and just, spend up a little bit at running back with guys like Rashad White or, maybe even Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker, that sort of group, and then spend down the receiver position a little bit and just sort of flip the build there. But I don't think you necessarily need to full fade the 4K running backs.
Talking about Derrick Henry possibly retiring after this game. I've seen that floated out there, but I guess maybe that's picking up a little more momentum behind that conversation. Zamir smash. Yeah, Zamir White looks really good. They prioritize the coach, defense and running the ball, hitting 100-yard thresholds important to them too, apparently. So yeah, I like Zamir White a good bit. Let's see. K-Town's Fun is asking about Taysom Hill. DK tournaments acquired does not play. Bobby, what do you think of Taysom? Where is he priced at now? Let's see.
I would have more interest in Juwan. Juwan's seeing the majority of targets. I know they both had touchdowns last week.
Yeah.
Juwan would be my priority of those tight ends.
Jamal Williams, he kind of needs a couple short touchdowns at the goal line. Like that's what he did last year for the Lions, led the league in touchdowns. Got himself a contract. Good for him. He's been, relegated to not doing much this season. 5.2 is kind of sort of cheap. I don't know how much you need it, but does he enter your pool at all? It didn't sound like Kyle was really on him with Kamara being out. Your thoughts here as far as Williams? Bobby?
I think Kyle gave pretty good analysis on Williams. He'll be someone I'm staying away from.
Let's see what else is going on here in the
Broccoli
chat.
Boy keeps asking me for my favorite raw points running back. He's on the one. I like Aaron Jones. He's on Aaron Jones. Who can I take versus him? Give me Connor over Jones. I haven't projected 2 points less, but
I like Connor a lot today too. Is everybody going to play Connor? Or not everybody. I think people are playing the cheap stuff. What do we have as far as running back ownership? And again, this stuff is going to change, but curious where we're at right now.
We haven't hit on Breece Hall. Do either of you like Breece Hall at all?
Not really. Like he's not terrible, but it's going to be a mess out there. And I guess I kind of like bad conditions for running backs, right?
Conditions for running backs. That's what yeah.
But the score that you got touchdowns are cool too.
You said the total's 30 though.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Oh, I thought you said that.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like he might touch the ball 22 times and the score can be like 10-7 or something. I'm not saying you can't play him. It's just like, what are the chances that that's the guy I need today?
Yeah.
How much you ask Kyle. Your thoughts as far as Hall.
I like Saquon. Someone mentioned Saquon in chat.
He's fine.
Yeah, I think Breece Hall kind of fits the bill for like if you're playing tournaments, you're trying to flip the build where you're spending down at receiver and maybe avoiding some of the chalky value running backs. But I mean, Breece Hall, he can definitely get there without scoring. He had 12 catches 2 weeks ago, 9 last week. If he has 10 grabs again, I'm sure he'll be able to put up 20, 25 DK points, maybe even in a game where there's not a ton of scoring. But I do think though, if I am doing that, I prefer Rashad White in the idea of paying up at running back.
I was just going to ask you, who do you prefer, him or White? Because I think that they're in the same tier, and I prefer White too amongst those two. But yeah, certainly Hall could catch, like you said, 10 passes. I wonder if he's got a reception prop out there. Trying to find props this morning. It's kind of tricky. Nope, there's nothing unless I'm missing it. I don't see anything out there as far as Hall. And you're right. If he catches 10 passes for 50 yards and he runs for like 80 yards or something like that, yeah, he can be fine. I just don't know if he's slate breaking. Let's see. Stan wants to know about Elijah Mitchell. We sort of talk about him like without saying his name. Kyle, I think he's too good to run on the ground. And also McCaffrey, CMC, he's probably going to be fine, but if he's not, Mitchell's got to be the guy that steps up. Mitchell's got a history of injuries too. Why would they ride him in a game that doesn't matter? It feels like they're going to jump him and go to the third guy. And Jordan Mason, that's where our projections are at. Is that where you feel like Mitchell's not going to get a ton? I guess he can. I don't want to speak in definitives, but it seems most likely Mitchell doesn't get much.
Yeah, that's what we're projecting. They activated Jeremy McNichols from the practice squad as well. So it sounds like he's going to. It sounds like right now we're going to plan on having Mitchell as being active but limited, and Mason leading the way. Which I think that would make the most sense. But again, it could be the same sort of question marks that you want to raise for a guy like Pierre Strong, where it seems like that, and I think that's the most likely outcome. But maybe there's a world where they let Eli Mitchell run crazy like he did last week. But no, I think the safest projection for the Niners is Mason as the RB1. And if that's the case, it's a really good spot for the 49ers. They're still going to have Shanahan calling the plays, and they're still going to be able to – I think they still have a 23 implied team total despite having a bunch of backups in there. So, still a really good spot for Mason.
Kyle question, because it's about the Detroit Lions. Bang the Drummond wants to know, anybody playing super sneaky Josh Reynolds today? He feels like a guy who would be less likely to get pulled off, right? If you're going to pull guys off, you're probably pulling off Amon-Ra first. So, he's a 3K guy that, okay, maybe. Reynolds, is he somebody you're interested in? Is he better than Raymond? I guess he's basically the same.
Yeah, I think maybe Reynolds has a little bit more touchdown equity than Raymond. They're actually pretty thin at receiver too. So it doesn't seem like, unless they're going to be playing DPJ and Antoine Green a ton, it doesn't seem like. And again, they might just be playing their starters, and obviously with Jameson Williams out, Reynolds could have a pretty decent role. He's 3-3. He could be one of those pivots down there. But I do think there are better value options down there.
Bobby, is there a player or a team that you're most afraid of being under the field on, just getting buried by because you don't have enough of them?
Probably Justin Jefferson.
Are you full Xing him out, or at least as far as the plan,
or just under on him?
Yeah. Kyle, same question.
In tournaments, I think the Philly guys, honestly, I know they're probably not going to be overly popular, so they probably won't burn me, but it would just be more of a FOMO thing, where if that game does end up being a spot where they have to go full blast till the final whistle, AJ Brown could drop an absolute bomb here, especially with no Devonta Smith.
Yeah, this was week 10. AJ Brown would be so popular. 8-2 on FanDuel, by the way, which is an awesome price.
Yeah.
8-2 on FanDuel, 8-7 on DK, which is perfectly fine as well. The absence of Smith, it really sets up nicely for him, except for, maybe they pump the brakes pretty quickly. Kyle, you have a take as far as Alan's asking about the Packers receivers? It's a tough read right now, I would say. They're all sort of you tell me. As far as Watson, Reed, Dobbs, Wicks, I think we're projecting them all currently in. Musgrave back, by the way. Musgrave expected back. So I wouldn't play Kraft if you're considering Kraft. But it's tough. And it is a motivated Green Bay team. But I don't know who I feel good about, with everybody being sort of different degrees of questionable.
Yeah, I think the only one you can really sort of feel confident in is Jaden Reed there. It just seems like he's the guy there now. Obviously, he had the big game last week, and he's been really good all year. So he's the guy that I would feel most confident in. But, with Watson coming back, he has a 2.5 catch prop, so it doesn't seem like he's going to be overly involved in the offense. I think that's a pretty accurate line there. So I've seen a lot of questions about Bo Melton. There's a good chance that he's not even active today. So they have, I think they have 7 active receivers on their active roster. So 2 of these guys are likely going to be inactive here. Maybe one if one guy's there for special teams. But I don't think you're playing Bo Melton here. And I think the only guy you can really feel confident in is Reed, or maybe you want to take a stab on getting a Watson, 50-yarder. But it's just pretty much Reed for me.
Watson, Reed, Dobb, Wicks, Melton, Heath, and again, Musgrave back as well. So a lot of potential pass catchers. Assuming all those guys play, stay tuned. It's a late game. Don't want to keep repeating myself, but I did not get a head-to-head from Overzet, and I think Overzet is full. I saw him tweeted out he can't take any more head-to-head. So I meant to send him one. I just didn't. I forgot. But Cash Game King, Overzet, good luck to him. Did you guys partake in that? Anybody send Pete a head-to-head? Probably not.
I haven't played a cash game in 6 or 7 years.
You don't miss them, do you? I'm guessing you don't miss them?
I don't miss them, no. I don't like playing guys like you.
I don't take offense to that, or should I be flattered by that? I don't know. Somewhere in the middle.
You're a cash game alien. They seen you on Miami-Dade Boulevard the other
day. Jeez. So give me a.
Were you in that mall, Dean? Is that why you weren't responding to our chat yesterday?
I was on the lam. Bobby, give me the goofiest play. It's week 18. It's the misinformation slate. It's the information slate.
This is my stack of. I'm gonna give you my stack. My favorite.
Give me the goofiest thing you're doing right now.
Carson Wentz, Ronnie Rivers, and Davis Allen.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Is that like in a small field, or you don't have to tell me exactly? Is that like
large field stuff? I'm definitely not putting it in small field.
Okay, just
I'm gonna have like 5% of it. Yeah.
Why not 2-2? Not. I mean, like knock one of those guys out. Knock out Allen or something. I guess Allen, the cheap tight end. Like who cares?
Carson Wentz loves his tight end. Dean, come on, you have to know this.
I mean, I haven't seen him play in like 7 years. How do I have to know this? I've not seen Carson Wentz.
He played last year.
It was very forgettable. What team was he on last year? Washington? Was he on Washington last year? I think it was, right?
I'm not a blocker. I'm about to boot Broccoli Boy from chat here.
Is Broccoli trolling you?
He's trolling me.
We're just honored to have him. He usually doesn't watch the show unless Tim is on. So I guess we won him over throughout the season, I suppose. But Kyle, how about yourself? What's the goofiest thing that you're doing as far as your lineups? And I guess you said you're only making a few when you're doing it by hand, so you're probably not being too goofy.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. I think there's a couple one-offs that I think are going to be pretty contrarian that I think many people will play. I think like Justin Ross is a guy that I have some interest in down there. DJ Chark's another guy who I have some of. I will say though, in terms of goofy, did you guys see the clip of Tariq Woolen walking up to Carson Wentz talking about how big of a fan he was, how he didn't want to, be a fanboy,
yes.
And everyone thinks that he thought it was Matthew Stafford that he was going up.
I didn't know that part of the story. That's hilarious.
I mean, I don't know why, unless he's, I guess, maybe from Philly or something. I don't know why he'd be walking up to Carson Wentz and be like, "Oh, I'm such a big fan. Like, I don't want a fanboy right now."
There was a window where Wentz was the guy for like a year, right? But yeah,
maybe
he's a Philly fan.
He blew his knee out. Yeah, but even then, I mean, Nick Foles won the ring, so I don't know. Like, is he that enthused with? Unless
does he walk up to everybody, like every quarterback with that, or every skill position player that's at Carson Wentz's level?
I've never seen anything like that.
He's been in this situation before, so he knows. He's been the guy approached when.
Who's that? Me?
Oh, you're the guy from DFS. You're on the content Mount Rushmore.
Have you been spotted, Bobby?
For
has anybody ever said you're hanging out in Southie? Has anybody ever said, "Hey, what? You're Bobby Gomes from RG. You won $1 million." Has this ever happened before?
Like when I was on the commercial, it happened, but no, not.
You were on the commercial? Like, were you holding up the check? What were you doing on the commercial?
Are you kidding, Dean?
I don't regale me with the details. I don't recall. I can't just call it up.
I was the Dave Gomes commercial, DraftKings. Me and my brother were on it.
What was your line?
5 seconds it was on TV.
What was your catchphrase? Did you have a catchphrase or something?
No, we were just jumping up and down like idiots because we won $1 million.
Okay, this sounds familiar. I do remember this actually. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
yeah, you probably made fun of me. Chop wrote an article about it and was like bashing the kid in the commercial, which was me. Don't pull that up. Don't pull that up. That's an ESPN article afterwards. But
is that the flow on the right there?
That's the one picture that I didn't want shown. That wasn't me in the. Yeah.
The internet's forever.
Yeah, you're looking like
once it's out there, it's out there.
You look like
I didn't know you had like such locks. I wasn't aware. It's pretty impressive.
It looked blonde.
I had a girlfriend was a hairdresser. We were trying different stuff.
Look at you. You look like Chase Winovich.
Yeah.
Who is that?
It's an old Patriots player. He used to have a long blonde hair. He went to Michigan as well.
That wasn't the commercial picture though. That was like that was like 2 years afterwards when they were still running the commercial. The commercial was like different. That looked like this.
Kyle, you ever? Oh, there you go.
I had the chase. Yeah.
We're supposed to know, Kyle. What percentage of the people in the chat know who this guy is? Like, I guess you got to be a college football guy. I don't know, but I've never heard of this dude, but that was a nice.
How do you not know who Chase Winovich is?
Yeah, if you're a
I
Michigan
don't know.
fan, you definitely know.
Oh,
who
I'm
he
a
is.
Patriots fan, so
Yeah, and he had the Patriots jersey on in the picture. Like it just was.
he's
just
actually in
perfect.
a lot of misinformation, like you, Dean. He has like a
looks like
conspiracy theorist YouTube channel.
Well, I'm not following it very clearly. I'm just playing coy. Who is that guy? You're not on to me. Kyle, have you ever been spotted in the streets of Detroit? And hey, wait, you're that you're that Kyle Murray. Has anybody ever spotted you out in the wild and said, you're the DFS guy?
Not quite. I do remember actually my first ever show on RotoGrinders. It was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. Someone commented on the video that I did with Cardi and said, if I see Kyle at the Lions game, I wonder if he'd be interested in me. I think in more than a friendship kind of way. So that was the only thing that I ever had like that. So I try to stay away.
There you go. Fair enough. What's going on in
Kyle
the chat?
conditions, I can tell.
What's that?
He conditions, Kyle.
Yeah, you got to, right?
You're not like a Perk Plus guy. You splurge on the conditioner. Yeah. You definitely.
Yeah, they're saying about my Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence shouldn't have that hair the way he's been playing. He doesn't deserve it. It's just my thought.
He's got to cut it. You got to earn the right to have
it.
a haircut. We should have Erik and Squirrel coming in momentarily. Here they are, right on cue. We're running out of gas talking.
Every time Squirrel comes into this conversation, he's just completely perplexed.
Well, he's so much better than this. He's like, what is this nonsense I have to deal with?
No one's better than this, Dean. No one's better than this.
What's up, Squirrel? What's up, Erik? Welcome to the information slates. We excited?
The misinformation slate.
Yeah.
Yes. Bobby has copywritten that. Smash the over. And he's said that at least 6 times throughout the show. But what do you got, Erik?
I was just going to say, Bobby, it's probably bad for you because almost everything you said that I was just listening. I didn't catch the entire show, but I heard the Rams takes and the Niners takes and all that fun stuff. And we're on a lot of the same stuff. So I don't know if that's good or that's
Are
bad.
you on Joe Burrow?
No Joe Burrow. He's getting ready for the playoffs. He's getting ready for the playoffs. Okay?
God's still killing me for that one.
Rightfully so. To be fair, rightfully so. It would be just to kill you for that take. We got to get the people. We got to finish strong here before we yield to Squirrel and to Ebeimfohr. Do want to say thanks for watching us throughout the entire season. Shout out to Bobby. Shout out to Kyle for stepping in. Of course, Tim, one of the original 3 founders of the People's Show. Hopefully we feel better soon enough. I see him hanging out in chat as well. There will be content going forward, obviously, not just the season ends, but like there will still be some content on the site, content on the old YouTube. I know the Pick Six show that I run, we're doing it Wednesday night, myself, Rebar, and Daigle. Looking forward to that, at least for a week or two, talking about a bunch of playoff content. But let's finish strong, Bobby. Hot take. I don't know how married you are to the Rams, but give me a hot take. Who's taking down the money? Who's the player or the stack that you need to win all that cheese, to be in the next DK commercial where you can show them an updated picture of your new haircut?
I'm going Ram stack. I'll stick with that because Erik's on it. Carson Wentz, Ronnie Rivers, Davis Allen, maybe some 2-2. I like the Rams.
I'm going to say the Raiders, by the way, shut out the Denver. The Raiders win like
Earl has
20-0.
Rams just by looking at his face. He's like,
are the Rams playing on this slate? Like what?
Are the Rams?
X them out. Kyle, what do you got?
I'll go with DJ Moore. I'll say 30 plus DK points for DJ Moore in this one. I like him quite a bit.
For Kyle, thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Kyle, for jumping on. For Bobby, for myself, for producer Steve. We're not going anywhere. Still 2 hours nonstop NFL DFS conversation. Ebeimfohr, Squirrel, take it away, Ebeimfohr.
Yeah, as always, the People's Show never disappoints. And welcome to the final regular season episode of GPP Final Takes here on RotoGrinders. I am, of course, your host, Erik Beimfohr, joined by, as always, my co-host, John Breslin, a.k.a. SquirrelPatrol. We got a lot to get to. I think it was last week somebody said, would you quit with the monologue and just ask Squirrel what he thinks about this slate or something like that? I do get a little wordy, but hey, that's what happens we're going to get down right to it because there is a lot of stuff to get through on this slate. There's stuff that we know that we need to throw aside. There's stuff that we need to really break down. As those guys mentioned, it is the information slate. Really quick, if you have not watched before, we don't necessarily go position by position or game by game. We try to kind of hit a lot of the key notes of what you see at the top of your screen. GPP Final Takes. Sometimes that's weather, sometimes, right, that's one player, whatever. Today, I do kind of want to go a little bit more position by position because I feel like there's so much to kind of try to diagnose. We will talk a little bit of the games and such, but I want to start actually at the running back position because I think when it comes to this slate, it's probably the not most important. It's all important, but kind of the thing to talk through, right? Because we have guys sitting out and the running backs benefit the most. I'll pull up lineup HQ in just a second. The big thing you'll see is that a couple of running backs who have guys either sitting out or potentially sitting out or opportunity opening up, namely a Jordan Mason or a Pierre Strong, are projecting as some of the highest owned players on this slate for good reason. How are you thinking about, let's start with like those two guys, and like how do you think about on a slate like this, the guys who seem the best, but there's also probably some other guys who we just don't know yet. How do you process that, like in your tournament, when you're putting together your 150?
Yeah, it's really hard. A couple of things that like I talked about on the Friday show with like JM to win. JM said like this is like almost a different sport. Like it is like the difference between like regular NFL main slate and like week 18 is almost the same difference as like main slate and like showdown or something, right? Like that, or single game contest. Like it's almost a totally different sport. It's like very news driven. And it's like week 18, I think you have to be comfortable, like just totally like Xing out a guy's projection or like totally changing a guy's projection. I think you were talking about like Pierre Strong and Jordan Mason.
Yep.
I don't have a ton of confidence in either of those guys. We don't
Right.
get like, solid news. It seems like the entire like industry, like if you look around, like Jordan Mason is projected as like one of the best running backs on this slate, like everywhere. I like, why do we think it's not Eli Mitchell? Like I think Christian McCaffrey is like pretty confirmed to sit.
Yep.
I don't know if he's going to be active or play at all. I don't know why they wouldn't just go to Eli Mitchell. And I think Eli Mitchell is expensive enough that then he just compares with like all the other kind of running backs on the slate. So I actually like Zamir White like much better than those guys because like Josh Jacobs is out. And Zamir White has like the track record of being the guy in that situation. So yeah, I don't have like a ton of, and like Pierre Strong, like, well, we have no idea what's going to happen. Like Cleveland always seems to like split up those running back carries. So like, is Kareem Hunt like still a factor? And I guess all you need to know is like, again, another thing is like kind of said on my Friday show, like the NFL has been giving us these Saturday slates to show us like how much we can get wrong on Saturday. And we play the same game on Sunday and get like all the same stuff wrong. Like we're just as much wrong on Sunday. Like we had all these like contract incentives yesterday and like everybody just came up just short on the contract incentives. Like I think Dalton Schultz is like one catch short. I think like Nelson Aguilar was like 20 yards short. It's like one pass for $250,000. And they couldn't get it done. And so we feel like he's like, oh, well, like DeAndre Hopkins has got, just 7 receptions for like he's going to get 6. And he's going to be super angry at Ryan Tannehill, right? Like he needs 2 touchdowns. Well, he's probably going to get 1. So yeah, like this is a slate that's very different from every other slate during regular season. And we will be shocked at the end of the day how much we got wrong.
Yeah, it's everything you said is so true, and kind of how I try to think about the slates. First, starting with what you said last, the incentive type stuff. Like I understand on this slate why we as an industry are trying to find any and all information that can help us understand how to project people, right? Who to play, all that kind of stuff. And incentives do play a part into like a little bit of that. But I think when it plays out in ownership, you see like that kind of stuff that really does not matter in terms of like their chance of winning you the tournament. That like if you want to bet a player prop because you believe in this incentive, whatever, by all means, do your thing, right? You want to bet over on DeAndre Hopkins, you want to bet over on Nelson Aguilar, go for it. Like I don't really have a problem with that. That's not how I deploy my funds, but I have no issue. But in DFS, it's like the only reason those things matter in this week is because we don't know, pardon my French, shit about anything. We don't know who's going to play. We don't know who's going to get targeted. We don't know anything. And so when we have information that we feel like tells us something, we latch onto it much harder in week 18. I don't know the incentives. I mean, other than like the stuff I've heard from other people talk about or whatever, I try to throw them aside because I just don't want it to get in my head and be like, I fall back at the end and I'm adjusting teams or whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know this guy's going to play. Cause like that comfort in week 18 of being like, I know this guy's going to play. I know he's going to get some production. People lean on that really heavily. Right. And we're seeing that today where people feel really confident that Jordan Mason, Pierre Strong or whatever are going to get the run. And we have other cheap running backs who are probably also going to get the run. It's just maybe a little more uncertain, but I'm not even sure that it's that much more uncertain. Like you said, I believe the most likely scenario in both of those situations is that Jordan Mason and Pierre Strong get the bulk of the work. I think logically it makes the most sense. Christian McCaffrey is not just sitting out. He's banged up. He got hurt last week. They're trying to win the Super Bowl. He's obviously not going to touch the ball. But Eli Mitchell, right, if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm like, well, Eli Mitchell's my backup. He's been a really good running back in this league before. He was really good last week when they needed him to come in and close out the game. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for a guy like Eli Mitchell, who's been hurt his whole career, to come in and like get 25 touches in this totally meaningless game. But if he played, like if he gets 10 carries, Jordan Mason is useless. Like I don't want 4,600 mega chalk Jordan Mason if Eli Mitchell plays at all. I want Jordan Mason to be the man. And that's the issue like that you're bringing up, that we just don't know that stuff. And so I'm not saying I'm not going to play Jordan Mason, but I'm saying I would be monitoring very closely like how much chalk I'm eating on this slate, because I want to eat far less of it, particularly at those uncertain running backs, than like any slate of the whole year.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there is some context with the San Francisco running back stuff, where I think Eli Mitchell was dealing with an illness earlier in the week. And I think like a beat reporter or somebody connected with the team said, I expect, Jordan Mason to be getting like the bulk of the work or something like that. And then Eli Mitchell was cleared of his illness. So that might put us in a different context than earlier in the week when there was like reports like Jordan Mason's probably going to be getting all of the work here. Yeah, I do. I just think it's a very, like the two things that like drive my thinking, especially for multi-entry this week, is like I want my like maximum exposures to probably be a little bit lower than they normally are. Because like if I'm like using projections, like I'm gonna get like 90% Jordan Mason, and
Right.
and so like on a normal week, if I'm getting like 95% of a guy or something, I might cut that down to like 35%. Like this week, maybe you want to cut it down to like 20, 15. Because like, and maybe you just want to change the projection entirely and be like, look, I think it's a great week to like go Eli Mitchell instead of Jordan Mason. Having said that, you probably also want to be like kind of tuned in, because if the coach is saying before the game, no, it's going to be Jordan Mason's week, like we're going all Jordan Mason, or like Eli Mitchell's inactive or something like that, along with Christian McCaffrey, then maybe you do want to be going in, then 100% Jordan Mason. So it's a very news driven week. I also think you really want to be stacking up games this week, because we don't necessarily know which games, but there's going to be games where guys are just taking guys out in the third quarter at halftime, and like you want to capture that all in one game, because that's probably going to happen somewhat, as a group or whatever, right? Like the coach is going to make a decision. All right, let's get all the backups in there, and. It could be staggered, like kind of saw with Baltimore yesterday. Like Gus Edwards wasn't getting his regular workload, but he was still like playing, I think, into the second half. It was just getting more of a carry here.
Melvin Gordon fumbled for the 10,000th time in his career.
Yeah. So like Melvin Gordon is like getting worked in. It was like a bigger Melvin Gordon, than you would normally see. But you were still getting the starters mixed in. So, but like then there's going to be some situations like we're kind of talking about. Like Detroit's a really good example where they might sit guys, but we don't know. And I'm leaning more towards I think they're going to play like almost the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, like I love the idea of like playing Jared Goff with like a bunch of, with like a stack of that game, like with Jahmyr Gibbs, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, thinking that it's going to be kind of all or nothing in these games. So I like the idea of like game stacking more than you would on a regular NFL main slate.
Yeah, because on a regular NFL main slate, I know every player. This is hyperbole, but I know every player in every game is going to play their generally allotted snaps, right? I need to nail game scripts and such, but like AJ Brown's going to play every play. CeeDee Lamb's going to play every play, right? Jamar Chase is going to play every play. None of that stuff really matters. But in this, the gains are so outsized when you hit that one game where A, it shoots out, and B, everybody's right. You nail the guys that are playing the whole game. It's kind of like a little more NBA-ish, right? I'm just trying to, right? Let me get that game that goes to OT. I got 4 from that game, and it just happens to fall into my lap. I didn't really predict the future. I didn't do anything crazy. It was just I needed the production to consolidate down in one game where, okay, the Mavs are playing the Blazers. That thing blows out, right? And I get the one game early that doesn't blow out, and it's all good. Quickly, 2 things that we'll get back to running back. You mentioned the Jordan Mason kind of what if we get some type of news before the afternoon, right? Eli Mitchell is out or something like that, which I don't expect, but they did call up, I believe it, Jeremy McNichols, which how the hell these guys are still getting jobs. I know it's only week 18, but Jeremy McNichols, my God, was on the first season of Hard Knocks or something. I can't believe that he's still, getting called up here, but nonetheless, I am being really thoughtful about late swap on this. Again, I'm more of a single entry, small amount of lineups player. And I'm actually, as I'm putting my teams together, I'm doing it kind of like with what you said. I wanted to tell a story. I'm planning around something in that lineup, but I'm also being cognizant of, okay, how many spots do I have for the afternoon? What could some afternoon swaps look like, right? If it goes poorly in the early slate, I don't want to play Jordan Mason, or I get news, oh my God, you have to play Jordan Mason now. I want to make sure I'm planning around the late window, because there's a bunch of games in the late window and there's a bunch of really key situations in the late window. And so late swap is a really, really, really big one. Let's talk about the run, finish up kind of some running backs, since we've talked a lot more of the macro level stuff. If we're not playing, and I'm not saying we're not playing Pierre Strong and Jordan Mason, to be clear to everyone, but they're a little more fragile, I think, than a lot of the times we get some of these guys in week 18. That's how I feel about everybody. Who are you looking more towards at the running back position, specifically for tournaments?
Yeah, so I like Zamir White because he's still cheaper, I think, than he should be, because he's been getting all of the work for the Raiders. So I think he's definitely in play. I like Chuba Hubbard. I think Carolina's situation is not really different than it has been. The past 6 to 8 weeks, the past couple of months. I think you've got to kind of spread it out. I think Breece Hall is in play. Again, the situations there are probably not different. I think we're going to see a lot of rush attempts in that game. So I think Ezekiel Elliott and Breece Hall are both in play more so than I would normally like playing running backs in a game which has a total of 30. But I think there's some weather conditions there. I can see both teams just running the ball. Because they
both want their season to be over so bad.
Yeah, both teams there, but that does give us a little bit of an advantage. And I think you can kind of go a little bit crazy. I see somebody in the chat's already asking Ronnie Rivers, and I think Ronnie Rivers is a good play. I like Ronnie Rivers as much as Jordan Mason, but I think Jordan Mason's going to be a lot higher owned just because people are going to run stuff based off of projections.
I think I prefer Ronnie Rivers to Jordan. I think Ronnie Rivers is my favorite running back on the slate. Sorry to cut you off, but while we're mentioning him, to your point, I don't really see the difference. I don't really see the difference.
I don't see the difference either. And I also think, but I think with Ronnie Rivers, you also then have to be concerned about Royce Freeman, because I think Royce Freeman,
Zach Evans, even he's uncertain.
So just showing how tentative all of this stuff is. So I think if you're playing single entry, you might actually be best off just kind of ignoring all of these guys that are so fragile. I actually don't think I would play Jordan Mason absent some kind of definitive, or at least a more definitive seeming coach speak, prior to the game. I would actually go with a Chuba Hubbard or a Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard's been kind of a disaster most of the season. Or Breece Hall, like somebody you are pretty confident is going to at least see a normal workload, rather than going with like Jordan Mason. I mean that might take you out of like CeeDee Lamb, and it might take you out of like Justin Jefferson even. I mean, obviously I try to like spend up for those guys if you can. It might take you out of like Tyreek Hill on FanDuel. But like play some of the mid-priced guys. Like go with a mid-priced build this week in single entry rather than trying to like guess right. Because I think everyone's going to say, well, I'm just going to take a guess on some of the cheaper guys, but they're all going to guess on Jordan Mason. And
Right.
again, if Jordan Mason ends up getting the 30 carries this week, then I'm wrong. But I could be wrong anyway. And I'd rather go with something that's like less fragile.
Here's one that I really like. I put in the expert survey. We're going to know who's playing wide receiver for the 49ers just as much as we're going to know who's playing running back for maybe more, because I know Ayuk and Debo ain't playing, and Juwan Jennings is hurt if I recall. Well, you're going to need to get inactives because God, week 18, we're 20 minutes in, and Ray McLeod is coming up, and Jeremy McNichols. These names, but Ray McLeod got designated to return. I believe he full practiced all week. Why I bring him up is because the 49ers wide receivers are all free, $3,000, and they're not playing Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and probably not George Kittle. And nobody wants to play them. Everybody wants to play Jordan Mason. And like, I get it. I like Jordan Mason too, like the idea of Jordan Mason. But as you said, we're guessing on everybody. They're all guesses. If Jeremy McNichols got 20 touches, would I be surprised? Yes. Would I be completely shocked? No. Because Jordan Mason does play. He plays special teams for this team. He's going to be active in the playoffs. If they just said, whatever, we don't give two shits about this game, just give it to this guy off the street. Right? Like it's not crazy, but I know that the wide receivers are going to be out there just as much. Right? So let's say Ray McLeod is active. We've got Ronnie Bell, who I feel pretty confident in. Ronnie Bell is kind of their gadget, a little bit of a gadgety type guy, not in the Debo way, but Ray McLeod has been kind of the Debo replacement. They almost have like 1-for-1 replacements. The backups are terrible and the starters are really, really good, but the backups fill a role in you play the Debo role, you play the Ayuk role, etc. And nobody's playing the wide receivers, right? And it's like, I don't know, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And no one's playing Ronnie Rivers, but everybody's playing Jordan Mason. And so anyway, I think that there are a lot of ways that we can go, but the one I want to talk about right now is you mentioned kind of like mid-range and just like playing the good guys we know are going to play. And like that, no one's playing Ken Walker as an example. I say no one, people are playing him, but he's not Jordan Mason. Ken Walker is in a must-win game for Seattle. He's their lead running back against Arizona at a good price. I know we had the shoulder thing, but like on a normal slate, I feel like Ken Walker would be like mega chalk. You know what I mean? Against Arizona, it feels like just a smash play, but nobody's going to those kind of guys. Do you have more of those? Right? Ken Walker, Rashad White. You mentioned Zamir White, James Conner, whatever. Do you have some of those guys that you really like?
Yeah, I think Connor is definitely in play. Actually, Aaron Jones is probably a guy. Because Green Bay, like that's a real game. the Packers Bears game. I mean, the Packers need to win. The Bears have been, putting up more of a fight like late in the season than early in the season. And I think like the Bears are going to be motivated to win this game. So actually, I really like Aaron Jones, and because AJ Dillon is out. Actually, somebody else just brought up in the chat. Somebody I was thinking of is Chase Brown, who's like cheaper than, or is as basically as cheap as all of these like really fragile tentative running backs. Like I feel like the Bengals might be interested. Like he's a rookie running back. Like why wouldn't they be playing more Chase Brown than Joe Mixon in the last game of the season and see what they have in Chase Brown? And he's a guy that gets receiving work as well. Like he's a guy that's probably going to put up like reasonable points for his price no matter what. Like even if Joe Mixon's playing the whole game and and maybe he kind of gets a touchdown, like backs into a touchdown. So like I feel like Chase Brown is somebody that would be in play. The Bengals are favored by touchdown against Cleveland. Expected to be resting their starters. What if Chase Brown is just splitting carries with Joe Mixon. Like Chase Brown's a guy we've been looking at on these like Saturday slates when the Bengals have been playing these smaller slates as a potential pivot option anyway, like on more like, on a more typical slate, even though it's a smaller slate. So like
I played him on those stupid slates and I keep losing, but I played him.
Yeah, like the little 3-gamers on Saturday just to show us how much we can get wrong, and then just Aaron Jones, Chase Brown, James Conner,
So the Chase Brown one's really interesting. So I thought that there was some incentive for Joe Mixon, but here's where incentives go wrong. Joe Mixon's got to be the best example. He's old. They maybe want to bring him back, maybe don't. I think they can cut him in this offseason if they really want to. But like you said, I think they probably would like to see a little more Chase Brown. Like if you ask the coaches, they would probably say, yeah, I probably want to see a little bit more Chase Brown just to kind of see, what he looks like. Maybe he doesn't play. He catches passes, but he doesn't play like 2-minute drill, third down long, because he hasn't necessarily figured out pass protection and all that kind of. Maybe they want to see him in those situations in one game before they go into the offseason, right? It's kind of the Justin Fields thing. Some people are a little scared off from Justin Fields, whereas I'm like, I'm a little worried about him just generally, but also I think that they're going to go wheels up in this game. The Bears, they are they don't care about their draft. I mean, not that they don't care. They generally don't care about their draft pick because they have the Panthers pick, so like they got the one. Who cares? And they need to know as much information about Justin Fields as they can possibly get. I feel like the Bengals are a little bit similar to that, where Joe Mixon's incentive is to get he needs 2 rushing touchdowns for $100,000. If they're playing Joe Mixon for 2 touchdowns for $100K, the guy's made like $50 million in his career or whatever, and he's making however many million this year. I don't think that's an incentive I'm necessarily worried about. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe they will try to get him 2 touchdowns. I don't know how they feel about Joe Mixon, but I think Chase Brown is just as likely to get touches as almost any of these other running backs. We just feel a lot more confident in the other guys. So he's a really good example. I kind of mentioned Ken Walker before. I think Bobby mentioned him too. But on the other side of that game, James Conner, like Arizona's out here trying to play too. James Conner crushed last week. It's a good matchup. Did you see what Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren did to the Seattle defense last week? It was a bludgeoning. I kind of like James Conner on the other side. I'm a little out on Aaron Jones because I do think people are gravitating to him a little bit. And I believe in the Bears defense. Maybe that will totally be faulty today. But what they've done, you remember back at the beginning of the season, we were like, oh my God, the Bears defense is the worst thing I've ever seen in my entire life. You just play guys against them all season, whatever. I mean, they got healthy and they added some guys like Montez Sweat. But I don't know exactly what happened. They've turned into like a for sure top 10 defense in the NFL over the course of the last month or so. And I believe in that. And so I kind of want to just get away from Aaron Jones to the Walkers and Zamir Whites and that kind of stuff. But I really like that range. Keep the questions coming. I want to keep hitting some questions. There's a lot to cover. We won't get to everything. I want to try to hit as many questions as you guys have. And we'll, of course, kind of bounce around some of these positions. Shout out Shiv Daddy. Aaron Jones is on his don't play again list. I feel you.
I got one more running back. Joel McLaughlin with Denver is a guy.
Oh, that's fun.
So he's got 80 yards over the last 2 games and 3 receptions. So he's another guy, in that Chase Brown kind of mold that's as cheap or almost as cheap as these like really fragile running backs that we're talking about that is seen in the field already regularly. So even if there's no change, again, if he gets his like 3-4 receptions per game or 40 yards per game, and breaks one and gets a long touchdown, then that's potential slate changer and probably a little safer than like some of the Jordan Masons that we're talking about.
That's what I love. He's a really good one, but Chase Brown is kind of the other one there. That's what I love about those guys, that they're going to have some form of a role regardless. So even if I whiff, right? Yeah. Like even if I whiff, there's something, right? It's kind of like Jaylen Warren before he kind of became Jaylen Warren. It was like, I really need a punt running back. This, again, rewind when he was like 4,300 or something. Rewind. And I'm like, if he doesn't kind of take over more, the game script doesn't go my way, he's still going to get 3 catches. He's still going to get 8 carries. And it's like, I can get lucky. But also, if something breaks my way, right, and this week in particular, if they say, we don't really need to see any more Javonte. We definitely don't need to see any more Samaje Perine. we don't need to see those guys, but we want to see some more Jaleel McLaughlin. Would that be surprising to anybody? I don't think so. And him and Chase Brown in particular are home run hitters, right? It's like somebody asked about Achane. We'll hit that Sunday night game in a little bit. But like I can be right in multiple ways about Chase Brown or Jaleel McLaughlin. I can really only be right in one way about Jordan Mason, and it's that he gets a lot of the work. He's not gonna rip off a bunch of 60-yard touchdowns. I say that he's gonna rip one off, but you know what I mean. Like I like to have guys that I can be right in multiple ways, especially at low ownership. All right, what do you think about Bijan? Falcons Saints game? Dean was mentioning the pace is really nice. The Saints are without Alvin Kamara and I believe Kendre Miller. Weird game, like just a very, very bizarre game. What do you think about Bijan and like anybody kind of in that game while we're touching on it?
I kind of feel about Bijan the way that I always do. He's a great running back, right? The Arthur Smith factor is just too much because we're talking about these guys like Jordan Mason that are super cheap, but might really be splitting work. And like Bijan's really expensive and he might be splitting work. So you can always play Bijan Robinson, and he obviously has the skill to have a big day. The problem is when Tyler Algier gets like 2 touchdowns, it's going to be so frustrating. and when Algier gets the 2 touchdowns or Cordell Patterson or whatever happens, you're going to have spent a lot more money on Bijan Robinson, like getting Bijan Robinson wrong and then Jordan Mason wrong. Having said that, I do think like Bijan probably has the upside, right? The upside is there. I'd be shocked in my like 150 set if I'm not playing any Bijan Robinson. But I'm not going to be playing a ton of them just because it's the fragility is still there, but you're paying a lot more for the fragility than you are, with the Jordan Mason. So.
For sure. What do you think about on the other side of that game with Kamara being ruled out? Are you interested in any Jamal Williams?
I think so. The only thing that I think Miller was it
Kendre
Miller. So I think he's back. So I don't
confirmed.
Have
yes, Kendre's back.
I do think Alvin Kamara is almost certainly out. Like I think I was writing that he's out. That he was going to try to play, but I think might have been right before we came on that he's out. So yeah, I think you can have some interest, but like the Falcons defense isn't one that you necessarily want to be picking on regardless. So it's, I don't know. I don't know. Like in another week, maybe that Alvin Kamara news would have more significance. Whereas this week, there's a ton of guys that are really cheap and that are backups. I don't want to talk you off Jamal Williams, but it's a different week, so I'm not as interested in that as I normally would be.
I'll talk you off Jamal Williams. Don't do that. There's other guys with juice. Like he's not going to get all the snaps. You have the thing about Jamal Williams is kind of what we were talking about before. I have a path to getting lucky on Chase Brown in multiple different ways. Jamal Williams is almost certainly not going to play all of the snaps. I know it feels like he is, but that's just not how it works. And so let's say you're going to get 65% of the work, 70% of the work from Jamal Williams. Let's just use that as a rough number, right? You got Taysom to deal with at the goal line. You got the fact that the Saints don't score a lot of points. You got the fact that Jamal Williams probably doesn't have a carry over like 8 yards this whole season. You're counting on for sure 1, maybe 2 goal line touchdowns in a Falcons and Saints game. I get it. I think it makes sense. We're trying to find like, someone's out, so someone benefits. But like I just would rather play, right? I know Zamir White's going to get the work. I know he's in a pretty good matchup. Like I know Ken Walker is going to get the work. I know he can rip an 80-yard touchdown at any moment and is in a good matchup. I just think that and then I would rather I would rather play Jordan Mason, or at least like wait on Jordan Mason news. Like I would rather plug Jordan Mason in and give myself the ability to swap to something, right? Maybe you get news, like you said, oh my gosh, Eli Mitchell's starting and expected to get the bulk of the work today, right? We're not expecting that report, but reports are going to happen before the afternoon that we didn't expect. And I would rather like benefit from that than play Jamal Williams. Maybe I'll be totally wrong, but we will see. We got to talk about Christian Kirk. Thank you guys for posting this. The inactives are going to be flying in. If you see something that's notable, please post it in the chat. I may not be able. Usually, I can keep track of it because it's only a handful of guys. Today, it might be a little bit chaotic, but This is funny. Everybody's rushing to be first on the Christian Kirk news. Thank you guys. If you have more questions, you have more inactives, post them there, but we got to talk about Christian Kirk. I'm a little disappointed he's not playing because I was so set to fade him because everybody was so confident. Like, oh, look, it's a name I know is too cheap. This guy's too good for this price, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, the dude just like got freaking Thanos or whatever, like a few weeks ago. And everybody's good playing him because they know his name. But without Christian Kirk, there are two things to think about. What kind of cheap wide receivers do you like, if at all, right? If we're talking about maybe coming up off of the Jordan Masons of the world, we might need some wide receiver savings. And then do you now have more interest in Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram in that game with Christian Kirk still out?
So yeah, my take on Christian Kirk actually doesn't change with him being out, which is just that, it's the worst week in the world to be mispriced because there's so many $3,000 guys. Or $4,500 or whatever. Christian Kirk was actually appropriately priced on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he was $3,000, so he was like much more in play on that site. But there's so many cheap wide receivers, there really wasn't a big difference between Christian Kirk and like Richie James, Chris Conley, like some bunch of other like $3,000 guys like Khalif Raymond, that where like everybody's going to be playing Christian Kirk just because he is like he is the name that's mispriced on DraftKings. So yeah, I do. I actually kind of agree with you. What you said about like San Francisco wide receivers, where like they're almost have like more certainty there than the running backs. So actually, we kind of saw that yesterday with the Baltimore game, because we were expecting like Mo.
Good point.
Main guy, and you saw like Justice Hill was playing and Gus Edwards was playing, and like a team's just not going to like run a running back out there generally, even if it's the backup, for like 30 carries. And it's like, well, we can't use like the fourth string guy, because they're always going to be splitting carries. Like a running back carry can be like pretty damaging to the body. So they generally don't want to just be running the same guy out there over and over and over again. But like wide receiver, again, we saw with like Baltimore, like Nelson Aguilar was getting some work. Like I think it was Tylan Wallace, I don't know if Laquan Treadwell actually got a catch.
He did.
Yeah. Okay. So
I was mad. I thought it was Tylan Wallace when he caught it. I was mad. That's the only reason I remember.
The wide receivers are actually just as in play, maybe even more so than some of the really cheap running backs. So I like going with some of the cheaper wide receivers. There's just a huge list of them. Yeah,
for sure. A couple that I want to hit on just while we are talking about it. And yes, I see all of the chat is on fire this morning. Week 18 is everybody's bringing the heat. Well, first, a couple of quick things. T. Higgins is out. So that's interesting to me. I don't have a super strong take on it yet, but one thing is, we talked a lot about the running backs, and the running backs are kind of not the most important thing to discuss, but kind of the most difficult because we're trying to project workload as opposed to like talent and projection and whatever. But with T out, if Jamar Chase is playing at 7,200 on DraftKings in a matchup with the Browns backup defense, give or take, I don't know if Jamar Chase is going to play all this. I don't have any idea. But what I do know is that it's probably a good matchup. Jake Browning has been playing. I'm not saying he's good, but he's been able to support big T. Higgins games, right? Big games from his guys. If you think Jamar Chase is going to play the whole game, I think he's one of the better tournament plays, like as a pivot off of all these other, right? We're all playing, like CeeDee has a chance to sit down the stretch of this game. AJ Brown has a chance to sit down the stretch of this game. We're assuming Justin Jefferson is going to be all good, and I do think he is, of course. But like, what if they fall behind, right? It's 28-7 at halftime. We're not going to win. Justin Jefferson sits out the fourth quarter. All these other teams have workload issues. Like, you have to be able to dive into a little bit of workload issues. I think Jamar Chase is really fascinating now for tournaments. Like I said, he could not play a lot either, but that also makes on the subject of the cheap Bengals wide receivers. Everybody probably knows who I'm going to say. My guy Yoshi. When I saw the T. Higgins news, I was like, week 18, my guy, Andre Yoshivas is his name, was playing. He kind of took Trenton Irwin's role a little bit the last time I believe it was Chase was out, or T, whatever. I think him, maybe even Charlie Jones in this game for the Bengals are super interesting. But it's mostly Yoshi for me here. I think he's a legit good tournament play now, basically, is what I'm saying without T. Higgins.
Is this the guy that I call Iosivas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
It's Yoshivas. Yeah. I learned this. I learned this recently too. So.
Okay. Yeah. I would have bet money that's who you were going to start off with. Then I like the fact that you then like went even more Yoshivias with like Charlie Jones, Brown.
Yeah, Charlie Jones. Yeah, Chuck Jones.
Charlie Jones. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into Charlie Jones. But yeah, wait, is Trenton Irwin still alive?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, I'm looking up snap counts right here. Welcome to Week 18. We're letting it rip on the fly. I didn't expect the T news necessarily, so I'm a little bit caught off guard. Trenton Irwin is definitely still alive, but so in the last couple of games, he's been more in the 40 to 50% snap range, whereas some of those other guys have risen up. That doesn't mean Trenton Irwin is not going to play. He probably will, but I think that so last game. Sorry, the internet being a little bit scroll. It was about a split. Irwin versus Yoshivas was kind of like a split. And so do with that what you want. But I think without T against a Browns backup defense, when I think I don't think anybody's going to react to this news is the reason why I bring it up. And I kind of want to react to the news that makes me feel more certain about situations when I have other ones that are really uncertain. You know what I mean? So a good one to bring up. Anything else on Bengals Browns? Is there anything, Jeff Driscoll, going to play some Jeff Driscoll, Harrison Bryant. Obviously we talked about Pierre Strong. Elijah Moore is active for this game. So I don't have any idea what that means for the Browns. For the Browns wide receivers, I kind of thought it would be, a David Bell week or something like that. But anything else on this game? Because we do have a lot of, opportunity available.
No, really. I think my primary interest is probably Chase Brown. But the T. Higgins news does like throw a little wrinkle in there, where actually, like some of the cheaper Bengals wide receivers are definitely in play. What I would say is I think that's maybe more of a multi-entry thing, and I would like probably use that more with like stacking. Where I think you can play like some Jake Browning stacks, and if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. But like stack that up because. It's going to be way different. And we also don't know what games are going to shoot out. Like something I pointed out on the Friday show is that we've got a bunch of games that have like these high 30s, low 40s, which is now kind of about the average NFL game total. And a lot of games where you've got like the home team favored by about 3 points. And like usually the Vegas lines are kind of gospel and we start like basing projections and like who we're going to play off these Vegas lines. Like these Vegas lines basically just say all of these are NFL games. We have no idea who's going to play. But generally, an NFL game should have about a 42-point total, and the home team should be favored by 3 points, right?
Right.
So it's like we don't know like what the total should be in any of these games. We don't know who's going to win any of these games. Like so, we could see some unexpected games shootouts. Like I don't think necessarily like Jets and Patriots is going to be that game because there's like weather and like context there, right? But I don't know, like the Cleveland, Cincinnati game, like. It could be like so multi-entry. Like I think it's worth like having some game stacks of that game, whereas I wouldn't normally have like a game stack of a 37 and a half point game.
I totally agree. It's absolutely perfectly said. I think there's just a couple of games we can probably toss out. Like you said, Jets, Patriots is for sure the easiest one. I don't think I want to stack Raiders, Broncos, although I like you said, I like Jaleel McLaughlin. I like Zamir White. I think there are pieces from within games like that you can play. But like, why can't the Browns backups against the Bengals score some points? I mean, Joe Flacco was a street free agent and he was scoring points for this team all year. They did it without Amari. They scored a bunch of points against a great defense without Amari. I don't think Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt matter at all. And David Njoku matters, but like, why can't they score some points? And if the Browns are resting their defensive starters, why can't Jake Browning and Jamar Chase and Chase Brown and those guys, why can't they score points? I don't see why that game isn't just as good of a game stack as just about any. And now maybe we have a little value that, right? You originally, maybe you just had Pierre Strong, Harrison Bryant, whatever. Now maybe you got a Bengals wide receiver. You can throw Chase Brown in there. I think that game's a really good one. You can still have some savings. You want Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb or somebody like that. You can afford them with that. I think that's a really good one. I'm just chat. I'm letting you know I'm ignoring the Desmond Ridder news. That's the last time I'll say his name on this. Taylor Heineke is out for anybody that was wanting to play. I hope not wanting to play Taylor Heineke today. Sorry, scrolling back a little bit to some questions. Kevin asked, I love a good hot take. What are you doing? Not necessarily just Boston Scott, but Eagles, right? So the Eagles have incentive to win. Because if Dallas loses, which we'll get to that in a second, because if Dallas loses, they can win the division. However, Dallas plays Washington. So it's pretty darn unlikely, but they also play at the same time. They're both in the afternoon window, meaning so the Eagles are going to have to come out and play their starters. But if they're scoreboard watching, it's 21-0 at half for the Cowboys, it's possible that the Eagles do pull their starters. I think it's a little too thin to get to a Boston Scott for me personally, although I think DeAndre Swift is technically questionable with an illness. I think we're expecting him to play. It's a situation to monitor, but right now I don't have any interest in Boston Scott. Fast forward 3 hours, maybe that will change. But as of right now, I don't. I do have some interest in the Eagles. What do you think about just this question and the Eagles as a whole?
I feel like Kenneth Gainwell would be the guy. Like, I think Kenneth Gainwell would be the next guy up. And it's kind of similar to what we're talking. Like, Gainwell's a guy that's like a plausible backup running back, that's going to get some work regardless, and especially get some receiving work. And then it's like Swift is, I guess, still questionable. So if something happens and he's out, I do think like Kenneth Gainwell is the next guy up. I feel like we haven't seen a Boston Scott game in a while. So like but I think like Kenneth Gainwell was like week one, or like really early in the season, like getting a lot of work. And I feel like there was a few weeks of why isn't Swift getting more work? Because like Kenneth Gainwell was getting too much. So like I feel like the Eagles would be more likely to give like Kenneth Gainwell more work. Yeah, like the first 2 weeks of the season, 14 carries each game for Gainwell. So I feel like that would be like Boston Scott's maybe a little bit too off the board for me unless like Swift is out. And I'm not planning on that. So, and if Swift is out, I'm probably going to go more to Gainwell than to Boston Scott.
That makes sense. What about, so Devonta Smith is out. Where does AJ Brown rank in your kind of wide receiver, at the top end? Where does AJ Brown rank, and any interest in, Goddard or any of the other Eagles pass catchers?
I'm probably going to end up under the field on the Eagles this week. Just like they've had some difficulties on offense, and maybe they come out and try to make a statement against the Giants, but it can go the other way too. I mean, it can go the way where maybe they're just getting a win and they're trying to get their guys like they don't have the momentum right now, so maybe they're trying to get their guys some rest if they go up big. Because that's it. Like again, it's so difficult to like parse out these situations. So like I will have like a Jalen Hurts, some Jalen Hurts stacks in my 150 set. Like I don't love it for single entry, whereas like Jalen Hurts is a guy that I've been playing in single entry because he's got the rushing upside. But like I've said it, if you take away Jalen Hurts' rushing touchdowns, he's statistically Russell Wilson, and I'm not like spending up for Russell Wilson. And if the Eagles wide receivers and running backs stop running out of bounds at the 1 yard line, like then you're paying up for Russell Wilson when you're playing Jalen Hurts. So like I'm probably going to end up under the field, whereas I think some people are looking at it as like perceived safety because the game is meaningful for the Eagles, but like I don't know, if they get up big, like that's the situation where I think they're liable to start pulling some guys.
I think we could, even if they score, it could be kind of like last year's Eagles where, first half you're feeling all right? You get 18 or 20 Jalen Hurts points in the first half, and then second half, you get nothing, and it's not, it's motivation based. Carolina guy, I see your question. We'll touch on that in a second, but I missed a bunch because chat was having some fun with the Christian Kirk inactive news. Shannon asked about Darius Slayton. So on the other side of that game, do you have any interest in any Giants? Darius Slayton being probably the lead candidate there.
Sure. Yeah, actually, I think that's very plausible. Like I feel like Tyrod Taylor has always been underrated. Like ever since the Chargers team doctor punctured his lung with a pain injection. But yeah, Tyrod Taylor was supposed to be the guy for the Chargers. Justin Herbert's rookie season. He's an old Virginia Tech guy, and I live in Virginia, so people are always talking up Tyrod Taylor. But yeah, I mean, Tyrod Taylor is actually a competent NFL quarterback. And we saw like what Darius Slayton can do last week. So I like that. And like I like to go some of those places rather than like some of the really fragile stuff is going to end up being highly owned. Like there are like real NFL players that are playing at discount prices today that we don't like think are going to be pulled at halftime or going to get pulled in the first quarter. So I like that idea of playing like a Tyrod Taylor, Darius Slayton, and the Eagles' pass defense, has been giving a ton of receptions. So yeah, I think that's definitely in play. It's a good like off the board stack that has some legs.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a great example of Tyrod Taylor was like a chalky, like people played him in cash last week. Now he, isn't 4K like Jeff Driscoll, and there are some other situations that people are trying to guess on. But like we know Tyrod's going to play. We know he's in a matchup that we've been targeting all season, same as Darius Slayton. And it's like it's like the quarterback of the stack of Ken Walker, right? It's like, what is he, 6,200? If Ken Walker was 6,200 in week 8 against the Cardinals, we would be like, Jesus, what are you doing with the Ken Walker chalk, right? Because he'd be the first guy into everybody's lineups. This week, last week, Tyrod Taylor was the first guy in everybody's lineups. And this week, he's in just as good of a spot and maybe better, and nobody's playing him. So I think that's a really good call. Alan asked about 2 wide receivers kind of in an interesting tier that we haven't discussed. What do you think about Mike Evans and DK Metcalf? And do you have a preference between the two?
Yeah, probably Mike Evans, because like Tampa Bay really needs this game. And like Carolina doesn't have a bad pass defense. Like it's maybe the one area where they've kind of been NFL quality. But I have a little bit of a concern with the Seattle Arizona game because it looks like an appealing spot, but both teams are in the top 3 of like rushing yards per game allowed. So this could be like a competitive NFL game that we don't want to get to, where so that maybe leads you more to like Kenneth Walker, to James Conner, but like the passing games might not put up what we hope they put up in this game, just because it might be like a competitive like game, where Seattle really wants to win, and Arizona just beat Philadelphia. So like these are competent NFL teams, got a higher game total, but it might not have as much chance of like really shooting out as some of the other games. So I just with the comparison there, I probably prefer Mike Evans, and have like a little bit of concern. Like I'll definitely saw some Geno stacks. I'll have some Kyler Murray stacks. It does have a high game total. That's maybe more of like a 150 set build thing for me than like single entry. It's not an area I'm like aiming to be over the field on.
I totally agree. I think you nailed it with the way that matchup plays out is much more, and also probably how each team wants to play. And right, it's like it's like if the Titans are facing a bad run defense, it's like DeAndre Hopkins could be appealing, but you know what Mike Vrabel wants to do? Put the ball in Derrick Henry's gut, 35 times or whatever. And if you saw last week, the reason why the Seahawks are in this position is because they refuse, no matter what, they refuse to take the shackles off the offense. They have DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Tyler Lockett, and Noah Fant, and a decent quarterback in Geno Smith, and they will not take the reins off, right? They punt on 4th and short at midfield. It's just how Pete Carroll wants to play. And Arizona, they have Greg Dortch and Rondale, and like Trey McBride's great, but like it's not an awesome passing offense. And they just beat the Eagles kind of going through James Conner and I think Michael Carter. And it's like, I think both teams would rather play that way. And so while Seattle is motivated and while Arizona is going to play their guys, I kind of would rather go to other spots, I think. But I do like the running backs. In that game. Oh God, there's Sam Howell questions already. I don't know how I feel about that one, but I do just want to say shout out TG. Thanks on Khalil Herbert last week. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut last week, but we called Khalil Herbert probably or possibly being the guy over Roshan Johnson, who was much more popular. And Khalil Herbert did end up the guy. Quickly on the Bears though, pretty good matchup for the Bears offense against the Packers. We have Justin Fields and DJ Moore, which I think makes sense, but you also do have a running game that's been pretty good. Do you think they stick with Khalil Herbert? Are you playing any of the Bears running backs? And then if yes or no, right, what about the Fields DJ Moore angle?
So yeah, I've got a thing where I don't play a bunch of Bears running backs. I think we've talked it over where My concern is that Justin Fields is more likely to just pull the ball down and run himself than dump it off to a wide receiver, or sorry, to a running back. That Khalil Herbert only got 2 receptions for 5 yards last game, along with his 124 yards and a touchdown. I like the idea of playing Justin Fields again, because those rushing points add up so much on both sides, especially on FanDuel. So I like the idea of playing Justin Fields. I like the DJ Moore thing. That's one of my favorite games to get to. I like the Jordan Love side as well. I wrote up 2 quarterbacks in the expert survey, Dak and Jordan Love. I mean, those were basically my 2 quarterbacks I'd really want to own the most of this week, I think. But Justin Fields is not that far behind. Justin Fields and Jordan Love are kind of about the same guy in the same game, or about a quarterbacks I have interest in owning at about the same rate. So yeah, I like Justin Fields, like Jordan Love in that game as well.
I like it. What's your preference on the Packers wide receivers or Packers pass catchers for reference for everybody? We don't know 100% who's kind of all active and inactive amongst their wide receivers, but it seems like just about everybody, there's Christian Watson coming back, Dontavian Wicks, obviously Jaden Reed. I'm missing some other names, Bo Melton popped up last week, and it's I don't even think he's going to be active today. You know what I mean? Because they just have a bunch of bodies. Plus, Luke Musgrave is back at tight end. So, are you leaning into just take the Jordan Reed thing, or do you have an off the wall take, or Jordan Love naked? What are you doing with that?
So I think it's a great place to go because there is still some uncertainty, and we kind of have to parse out. I don't know if we even know as of right now exactly who's playing. So basically I like whoever's playing, but probably if I had to rank them, I'd probably say it's Jaden Reed, and then Christian Watson. If Musgrave is playing, he's pretty interesting because he's a real NFL player, that people may be totally off. And so I guess it's an afternoon game. We're not going to get word until then. So basically I just like the idea of playing Jordan Love, stacking him, and then you probably have multiple spots to play with. I like the idea of multi-stacking. So I want to stack more this week than I normally do. So that would give me maybe 2 receiver spots with Jordan Love, and then you can kind of adjust as necessary. I love the idea of running it back with DJ Moore. So I like the idea of overstacking and game stacking this week. And that game in particular is one that I'm pretty interested in.
That makes a ton of sense. Wendy, I see your question, but there was another one that I'm forgetting that I'm missing. Somebody asked about, FanDuel cheapies. We talked a lot about a lot of these guys through the frame of DraftKings, but how are you processing, FanDuel value being much different with half PPR, especially this week, right? Some of these Yoshivas and, Ray McLeod are maybe not so relevant on FanDuel. How are you approaching FanDuel from a value perspective?
So there's not a huge difference in my thought process. I do think there's enough guys in the mid-range. You can play a few mid-range guys and still get some spend ups in your lineup, and that's maybe more relevant on FanDuel because we have that Buffalo Miami game that's Sunday night game. So I like the idea of being over the field on that game, and you probably want to backload your lineups more so on FanDuel just because that game is there. So we have some really appealing games. We have more games in the afternoon slate than we normally do. And then we have that Sunday night game on FanDuel as well. So I like the idea of kind of maybe waiting for some news. We're going to get just as much, if you look at the 1:00 news we've gotten with Christian Kirk being out, T. Higgins being out, we're going to get just as many surprises or things that we weren't sure of in the 4:00 window. And there's going to be a lot less reaction to it. So I like the idea of backloading your lineups on FanDuel. One thing on FanDuel, Johnny Munt is 4,500. And so he's he's one of those guys, it is definitively in play. It's not really a week 18 thing. It's a TJ Hawkinson getting hurt thing. So, he's only 4,500. So I like the idea of maybe spending down at tight end. And that's really getting you then the spend ups. And you don't have to go down necessarily to the Jordan Mason level. You kind of, stay at the Zamir White level on FanDuel. And Zamir White may be a kind of a better play on FanDuel anyway. Just he's not a huge receiving back. So, And then you're like sticking around the mid range with like one spend up on FanDuel, and you don't have to go like crazy playing a bunch of like 4,000, 4,500 wide receivers.
I love that. On FanDuel, there was two FanDuel questions that I recall. I can't scroll all the way back in the chat. Apologies for not pulling them up for you guys. One question was on that Dolphins Bills game. How much are you prioritizing Devin Achane in on your FanDuel set? For those unaware, Raheem Mostert and Jalen Waddle are not going to play tonight. So we kind of have the same Dolphins of last week, where Achane popped up and had a pretty big game, despite it looked grim for a little while until that late touchdown. But he was their whole offense, almost like more than Tyreek Hill. Achane was. So what do you think about Achane and the Dolphins?
Yeah, I like Devin Achane because Mostert's out now. So we saw Jeff Wilson get some work, and we kind of talked about it last week, that and it ended up actually breaking down, I think, the way that we talked about it, where like Jeff Wilson, I think, was a plausible, really cheap play, but that's maybe not as much of a factor this week, where we have like a bunch of plausible, really cheap plays. But yeah, I think you want to Devin Achane is probably my top rated running back now that we have confirmation that Mostert's out, Jalen Waddle out as well. Yeah, I think you want to save some space there for that Buffalo Miami game, and one of the primary pieces I'm interested in is Devin Achane.
I totally agree. The other question was, I believe, Luis. Shout out Luis, and shout out everybody who has hung with us all season and dealt when I go on long monologues and let me know, hey, shut up and let Squirrel talk. I appreciate you guys. Luis has consistently asked, and I want to make sure that we hit it because he's hung out with us every Sunday. Favorite stack on FanDuel, and I'll add, does it differ from DraftKings? You know, a lot of the times that early in the season we talked through, right? Like, I don't need to go down very far. Just play Lamar or Hurts or Allen or whatever on FanDuel. How do you feel about that this week in terms of your favorite stack on FanDuel?
Yeah, my favorite stack is honestly Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. And I want to give some kind of, it's crazy off the board, Ronnie Rivers passes to like Ben Skoranek or something like that. Like it really is just like, maybe we're overthinking things. Like there's so much news and so much like input like flying at us this week 18. Oh my God, this guy's active and this guy's so split. Like the Cowboys have a 30-point implied point total against the worst defense in the league. They just announced like the coach is probably not going to be there after the game. So he's cleaning out his office. Maybe we want to focus on like Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb. This is a game that has meaning to them, and it's absolutely possible. Maybe they get up, by 30 points and they're pulling guys in the fourth quarter. Okay, like CeeDee Lamb would probably be part of that. So I would actually prioritize spending up for that. Like I want to say like, it's like Josh Allen and you want to run it back with Devin Achane. But that's like just kind of too expensive. Like Dak Prescott, I think is $800 cheaper than Josh Allen on FanDuel. So like I'd actually prioritize the Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. Then dropping down in price if you want to get a little bit cheaper. My favorite after Dak is probably Jordan Love, and pick your Packers wide receiver, and probably Jaden Reed, who we got to watch for the injury news in the afternoon window. But yeah, those are probably my two favorite stacks. And then after that, I do like the idea of trying to get some pieces or a stack of that Dolphins Miami game.
I love it.
Dolphins Bills.
Yeah, we got it. I agree, totally agree. I'll just add, I know they got just roasted by the Ravens last week, but I do still believe the Dolphins defense, even they lost Bradley Chubb, but I think it's decent. I still love that game. And I love Achane, and I think you can play James Cook or Josh Allen or whatever for sure. But there's a lot of games and a lot of appealing guys. And like you said, Dak and CeeDee are playing the defense we've targeted every week for the whole season, and they need to win. So like you said, of course, aren't we all worried, fourth quarter comes and those guys are not playing? But do you know why they would not be playing in the fourth quarter? It's because they scored 35, 40 points. Like that's... And I want the offense that scores 35, 40 today because I don't have any idea if anyone else is going to do that.
Yeah, if there's a week not to be concerned about a blowout, it's this week where a bunch of teams might be pulling guys in the third, fourth quarter regardless, right? Not because they got up by 30 points, but because, we just want to get these guys some looks, or we don't want anybody, to get hurt that's been playing all year, have him get hurt in the fourth quarter of the last game of the meaningless game in week 18. Like, a bunch of teams might be pulling guys in the third and fourth quarters. Like, I'd rather have it be I'd rather have my stack be the one where they're pulling guys in the fourth quarter because they're up by 30 points.
Totally agree. All right. We got more news. Freaking week 18. We'll touch on that in just a second, but Donnie asked a really good question. He says, QQ, I think construction's the most important thing today. What's Squirrel's most important or first rule he's putting into his 150 set?
It's not necessarily a rule, but I do think like changing the projections to get off some of these like guys that might really pop in like optimal lineups, and going with more of a mid-range build. Like, you don't have to drop down that much. And maybe my other mindset is that I think the guys whose names you didn't know before this week or who weren't relevant, before this week, there's like a huge rush to play those guys. Like, so there's a huge rush to play like Jordan Mason. I mean, we said we kind of like Ronnie Rivers, but like, yeah, the Royce Freeman thing is still in play. People are going to rush out to play Pierre Strong. Like, there's no reason not to play like Darius Slayton. It's like, just an example we brought up. Like, he's a really cheap guy that's been playing all year. Like, well, he might still have, and he's had 2 really good games in a row. So like maybe Darius Slayton is in play and he's going to see like 1% ownership, because like people want to play like 40% Jordan Mason or something like that. So just like a mindset that you don't need to rush out and play guys you haven't heard of or who have not been relevant before this week. And you don't have to necessarily have some kind of stars and scrubs build. Like, I love, CeeDee Lamb, and he's the most expensive wide receiver, but you can like play CeeDee Lamb like you normally do every week and fit in a bunch of then just like mid-priced guys, like maybe a cheap tight end, and you don't have to play a totally different construction this week than you normally do.
Yeah, I love the kind of changing up the projections. That's like what I do like most of the season. It's like I pull stuff in and then I try to run like it's almost like what if, like if then if you're a spreadsheet bro, right? It's like, well, what if the projection, right? What if the workload projection on Jordan Mason is off by, right? We're projecting him for whatever, 75% of the work. What if it's 50? What does that look like? And then what does it look like for the offense, right? What we're projecting Ray McLeod for whatever. Well, what happens if he plays every snap? And like mix and match, it's just like experimental. But today, I think it's really important. You'll see really quickly how easily the best plays become bad plays, especially at their ownership, and how some of the other plays become so much better plays just by just being like, yeah, what if I do this or whatever? We'll talk about Swift in just a second, but the Carolina guy asked about in a large field, we'll just say, one stack, because you were talking about Dak CD. Is it still Dak CD, or do you have another kind of one big crazy off the wall large field tournament stack on FanDuel?
Yeah, no, I think it's still like Dak and CeeDee Lamb. Why go different? I mean, we really might just be overthinking this because we've got one of the best quarterbacks in the league with one of the best wide receivers in the league in a game they want to win against the worst defense in the league. And they've got the highest implied point total on the slate. I don't know. Like, if you were asking me to just pick one, it's Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. And again, like, I really want to say something off the board that sounds crazy. It's like, oh, you've never even heard of this guy. You've heard of CeeDee Lamb, but maybe play him.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing, I know you weren't asking me and you were asking for large field. If you're playing, maybe on the single entry folks or the smaller field folks that are listening as well, the really nice thing about Dak CD or, just CD this week is this week among all of them, you really don't have to be perfect. You know what I mean? There are some weeks where it's like, dude, there's this 4K running back who's a lock, right? It's an actual lock. It's not Jordan Mason level. And it's like, you got to fade a bunch of just awesome projections that are not flimsy at all. This week, it's like, there are very few layups. Like CeeDee Lamb doesn't need to score 45 like he might in another week at this price and this ownership. Like, dude, just bank your 20 plus from CD. You can win the tournament elsewhere. You know what I mean? Like, somebody else can pop up for you. Just take your layup, if you will, from CD. Now, layups don't really exist in football, but you get the point. I'll answer a couple of these and then we'll hit the Swift stuff because I want to get your takes on Philly. Now, Power asked, do you downgrade Breece Hall with snow and wind? A, yes, but B, mostly just this game. Like, there's so many games we've said kind of at the top that it feels like both the Jets and the Patriots just want to get the hell out of Dodge and get this season over with. Brees is awesome. He's one of my favorite players in the NFL, but there's just so many other guys. I don't want to invest in that game. Anything else to add?
Yeah, actually, so I did bring him up, like Brees Hall and Ezekiel Elliott as like running backs I was interested in earlier, because I do think they're more likely to just run the ball. But actually, the Swift news actually does change that a little bit. So now we have like at least one more really viable running back in kind of Gainwell. And so, probably more likely now to skip over that Jets Patriots game. Again, I said like I was more interested in it than I normally would a game with like a 30-point total. But 29.5 now. But because I do think the reason it's so low is I think both teams will probably be running the ball. That's even more true with like really crappy weather. I generally am not going to fade a running back in snow, rain, because I think they probably like the team would rather run the ball, right, and just hope the running back holds on to it, which is his job, than start throwing the ball up in the air, and then you don't know what's going to happen with like rain and. So normally like snow kind of actually makes me upgrade a running back a little bit more. So I will definitely still have some Brees Hall, but maybe a little bit less now that I got to make some room for kind of Gainwell.
The only thing I would add on Brees and Zeke really is that their value really hasn't been in rushing, either of them. It has been in receiving, particularly Brees, but I mean Zeke to a lesser extent. So, they're not Derrick Henry out there, let's just say, and neither of these offenses are any good. So I don't think they're crazy at all. I mean, they're like workhorse running backs. One's really good, one just gets a lot of work. There's crazier things to play for sure, but I just think we're starting to stack a lot of playable guys at the running back position, and they're not on the two worst offenses in the NFL playing each other with good defenses. All right. Let's talk about this is there haven't been updates on any of these other cheap running backs, but we now just got an additional or multiple additional cheap running backs. DeAndre Swift, shout out Shannon and some other folks in the chat. DeAndre Swift is not expected to play today. So we got the question earlier, and this is really funny. This is so week 18. If anybody doesn't know, go look up Boston Scott game logs against the New York Giants, and you'll see that this guy's still only in the NFL probably for the handful of times he's played the New York Giants, because he just crushes them every single time. It's so bizarre. But without DeAndre Swift, we have probably Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott. Rashad Penny will be the third active running back. I don't suspect he's going to play a lot. But how are you processing Swift being out? Is it still really Gainwell the priority for you, or does Scott move up? What are you thinking?
I think it's Kenneth Gainwell. Like I don't really pay a ton of attention to the player versus opponent stuff. I mean, I know it's like an NFC East thing, so there's been multiple like Boston Scott games against the Giants. I feel like Kenneth Gainwell is the next guy up. Like I feel like Boston Scott has definitively been the backup to Kenneth Gainwell after Swift. So, and we saw in weeks 1 and 2, Kenneth Gainwell getting 14 carries per game. I would rather play Kenneth Gainwell than Boston Scott. Like I don't. Unless there's something that comes out ahead of time where they say, like, oh yeah, we like really need to get Boston Scott more touches against the Giants. Like, I don't think the team is thinking that way at all. So like I would go with Kenneth Gainwell over Boston Scott, and I'll probably be like I haven't looked at things anything updated since we got the Swift news. I kind of was not expecting that, but I imagine I'm going to be like clearing the way for some kind of Gainwell, and he might be one of my higher owned running backs.
Yeah, it just makes me really even more interested in what we talked about before, being super thoughtful about late swap and being super thoughtful about how my lineups fit together and what it allows me to do in the afternoon. Like I want to be able to play Gainwell, right? If he's going to be if he's the man, like, yeah, dude, like I just want to put, he's probably the best running back play on the slate if he's the man in this backfield. But I also want to be, I just want to be flexible, right? I want to be flexible for Jordan Mason. I want to be flexible for Ronnie Rivers. I want to be flexible for DeAndre Swift or Kenneth Gainwell, or Boston Scott. Maybe they come out and say like, yeah, it's going to be a split between those two. Be like, well, I want to make sure, I just want to be flexible for all, because the afternoon's crazy now, right? You mentioned before, guys like Jaleel McLaughlin are in that afternoon slate. We got option, Zamir is in that afternoon. Like there's just so many, Ken Walker, right? James Conner. There's so many running backs available back there. What this is doing for me, I don't know about you, like Pierre Strong is like really falling far down the list now because I want to have the slots available for all these other guys.
Yeah, exactly. So Yeah, I think the Kenneth Gainwell news is significant, and that the afternoon window is becoming more and more appealing. And I kind of said it, and I hadn't really even thought it out that way in my head until I said it earlier in the show. But the idea that we're going to get just as much information that is not going to be reacted to because people won't lead swap their lineups in that 4 o'clock window. That yeah, the 1 o'clock plays are looking more and more like tenuous as the show goes on.
Yeah, it's going to be a stressful hour leading up to lock. Let's just say that much, because we do have some of these spots that I really like. We talked about like that Browns Bengals game. I think is pretty fun. You obviously have Justin Jefferson, Vikings Lions looks really fun. There are some really good games that and some really good plays on the early slate. But then my brain is like, no, dum. Like your edge is probably in all this news that comes out here. So as we start to close here, the folks are going to be joining us here. If you were like putting together, not rules or whatever, but how do you process this when you're like the afternoon slate is looking really a lot more appealing, like you just said? How do you start to like build that into your teams? You know what I mean? You're telling yourself, I want to make sure I'm really flexible for the afternoon, but also I don't want to just like ride off the early slate. How are you thinking that through?
I think I'll be, when I'm playing guys in the 1 o'clock window, it's probably going to be game stacks. Like I said, I really want to over game stack. And it's like, yeah, maybe Tampa Bay does go like berserk against Carolina. It's possible. Like any team is like kind of in Carolina's position is liable to just kind of fold. Not saying they will. Just, I mean, Tampa Bay is really playing for something. Carolina probably looking forward to getting their vacation in. So if I'm playing something in like the 1 o'clock window, and like, yeah, I might play some Jake Browning, but it's going to be like big game stacks. And that's a situation where maybe I do play like a Pierre Strong on some of those teams, and I'm probably more likely to go with Chase Brown because of ownership. Maybe Jared Goff, right? He's playing this whole game, and Detroit just like romps Minnesota, or vice versa. So I'm going to be game stacking the 1 o'clock window when I'm using it. Like I'll use like a quarterback, multiple receivers, a running back from the other team, either wide receiver, tight end, running back, and game stack that 1 o'clock window. Like imagine if this kind of Gainwell news had come out, or sorry, like the DeAndre Swift news had come out at 1:30 or 2 o'clock, which is just probably more likely than it coming out now. Like how many people would not be late swapping onto that? Because I've got I'm not playing Swift anyway. I don't need to change onto Gainwell. And I think we're probably going to have more news like this coming out for those 4 o'clock games. So it's probably game stack or nothing for me in the 1 o'clock window.
I think that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, and so perfect, right? Like for the people that weren't going to pay attention, right? They were going to go to lunch or something after this and not pay attention to their DFS teams. You just lucked out big time because you were not going to be ready for the Swift news in an hour and a half before the game, and now you get to be like, oh, I don't want to play PR Strong. I got to be ready for Kenneth Gainwell. As we bring in our three lovely friends, week 18, we've made it all the way through this season, and there's nothing better than talking about Jeremy McNichols, Andre Yoshivas, Ray McLeod. There's nothing better than closing out your regular season talking about that. But before I go to these three fine young gentlemen here, I got to get the final regular season bold call. I'm making one rule for the last show of the regular season, Squirrel. You can't say Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb because you've made that conviction. We've slotted that into our lineups. What is the other thing you got to put into your lineups that's going to win all the money today?
So I'd just go with like Jordan Love and whichever Packers wide receiver is playing. My hot take though is actually still holding strong from the expert survey, is that no offensive player reaches their contract incentive. Like, so nobody, no DeAndre Hopkins, no like whoever it is, none of it's going to happen. Dalton Schultz, Nelson Aguilar, none of these guys are going to get their money. Nobody's reaching their contract incentive.
I love that. I don't remember exactly how I put it in the expert survey, but I'm going to cheat and use my hot take as well. But I think it was something along the lines of Rams 49ers is the highest scoring game on the slate, something like that. That's my favorite game. I wanted to call that out also because I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. We sounded like we were really dunking on Jordan Mason the whole show, and we kind of were. But I whether it's Jordan Mason, whether it's one of the wide receivers, whether it's that's great, whether it's somebody, Sam Darnold, I think is playable in large field tournaments. Like the tight end, if Kittle's not going, Charlie Warner. There's just so much on both sides that I think that you can play that I don't want that game to get lost in the shuffle. And it's in the afternoon slate. So we'll get a little bit more news on that. Before we start to get out of here, if you have questions, I know there's a bunch of questions piling in. These guys got you. I promise. These guys got you. But TJ, fresh haircut for week 18. The folks are already asking where you get your haircut at. Do you believe in look good, feel good, play good? Is that what's happening here in week 18?
Yeah, a little bit of look good, feel good, play good for week 18. I'm trying to make sure I earn my spot for next year. I got a few contract incentives coming my way that I'm trying to make sure that I hit here before the end of the regular season. And then I'm also flying to Toronto this week to do some interviews for the new Marvel show. So I wanted to make sure I look good for that one.
That is awesome. And congrats. Good luck. I'm jealous. Luch, how are we feeling? Week 18. Are you overwhelmed?
A little bit, but nothing better than talking with four of my good friends here and over 800 people watching the stream right now. So I'm sure we'll hash it out in the next 40 minutes. We'll be fine. That's for sure. Andre, I always enjoy getting your kind of hot take. And let me tell you what, week 18 is the best for hot takes. What are you feeling today?
Yes, it is. And I'm feeling that I mean, everyone thinks this Washington game is going to be a blowout against Dallas. I don't think so. I think it's going to be close. So I think Curtis Samuel is going to be in the $1 million winning lineup today.
That is fun. I love that. Go Sam Howell. That's what we'll end on a positive Sam Howell note. The regular season. I couldn't ask for anything more. I'm going to get one shameless plug before I get out of here for the regular season. We are back on Sirius tonight. So enjoy these guys for the next while. They'll answer all of your questions. And if you want to come hang out with myself and Beer, it'll be myself and Beer on Sirius tonight from 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern, closing out the regular season and sweating the games and getting into Sunday Night Football. I'll see you guys later and enjoy the show with these guys. Guys, have a good one.
Thanks, guys. Amazing stuff as always. Can't believe we're here in week 18. What's going on, guys? How's it going?
We got our little crew back together. The crew that used to hang out every day for all the content we were doing towards the end of the pandemic, and now we're back together.
Yes, let's get back to it. Hopefully do a lot more of this.
Can't believe that was borderline 3-4 years ago already, looking back. And I was playing Outlaw Tour Golf DFS. I mean, Googling creative player golfers that were just, coming out of high school. And I love the situation we're in much more now when we have real football, although we're dipping our toes into some crazy salary savers in week 18. And I got two of the best guys here to help us break it down. Make sure you're plugging some questions in the live stream Discord or the YouTube chat as well. Couple quick notes here, and then we'll get going. Our props and pick'em package is awesome. Our RG Experts projection team take our premium stats and comb them through the market for any inefficiencies. Check out the props and pick'em package right there on the RotoGrinders homepage. And a lot of our experts over there at scoresandodds.com as well, just firing in a ton of volume, ton of great picks. NHL is cooking. If you're not betting on NHL and you're in a legal sports betting state, you're missing out. Our prop model for NHL is absolutely on fire this year. So we're cooking over there with the props and pick'em package and over there in Scores and Odds as well. And if you haven't checked out SimLabs yet, I mean, what an awesome product RG launched in the middle of the season. Gotta love SimLabs. Check out SimLabs if you're into simulations. Super easy. A couple of clicks and you get simulated lineups from some of the top technology in the industry. So make sure you're checking out SimLabs, and the link is in the description for more info. And if you are a combo and NFL premium sub, you have access to all of the NFL SimLabs tools if you weren't aware of that. And lastly, of course, FanDuel. If you're not a FanDuel sportsbook and you're in a legal sports betting state, I don't know what you're doing. Obviously, FanDuel, our sponsor here for Crunch Time, bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets. Pretty sweet deal. It's week 18. The playoffs are coming up. never too late to start diving in, go get those bonus bets over there on FanDuel Sportsbook. With that being said, this is going to be a fun one. Again, we got fresh cut TJ over here, got Andre. It's week 18. We're feeling pretty good, but we're going to start talking about quarterbacks. We'll go position by position. Obviously, FanDuel saying, hey, we're going to rewind the clock here and put the Buffalo-Miami game on the main slate, right? Just like old times. So talk to me about quarterback today, TJ. I'll throw it over to you first. And obviously, a couple of decent players in that late night hammer game on FanDuel compared to DraftKings where you don't get a chance to put them in your player pool.
Yeah, big time. Like, I think the biggest factor on the slate, like the biggest difference on the slate between FanDuel and DraftKings is, well, obviously it's that game. In general, it's Raheem Mostert. Or sorry, not because Raheem Mostert is out, Devon Achane. He's the number one running back over there. I was shocked when Mostert was out last week how low owned Achane was. Like, he was my highest owned running back after all that news. And I think he should be again tonight. He got like the full workload. Jeff Wilson got in there a little bit, but it was mostly Achane. And so that's the biggest thing. I think he's the number one running back over there. But getting back to quarterback, it's kind of a 2-horse race for me today in terms of my favorite one. It's between Justin Fields and Nick Mullins. I think if you're playing a cash game, it's Nick Mullins as the guy you're running in your cash lineup as quarterback over there today. From an MME, like even in a 3-max, like the guy I would add to that would be Dak Prescott. So Prescott, Fields, and Mullins are the 3 guys that I would be going to the most. I would be interested in taking a shot on maybe a few of these cheap guys like a Jeff Driscoll or Blaine Gabbert, something like that. But I think they're more enticing on DraftKings where the price is a little bit greater between the very cheap quarterbacks and the very expensive quarterbacks. And so on FanDuel, I would rather just be paying up Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, Nick Mullins. Those would be my top 3 guys I'd be going with there.
Andre, what's up for quarterback today? What are your thoughts here?
Quarterback, I have a lot of more quarterbacks than I normally would have today. I love Dak Prescott a lot today. Nick Mullins, I like him too. A little bit concerned that he might get pulled during the game because of his play, but we'll see how that goes. But I also do like for GPPs, I do like getting to guys like Jared Goff a lot. They have a 25 implied team total here on the slate. I know it's going to be different from a lot of people to go with that, but I'm trying to win first place and take down everything. And even though they have nothing to play for, they still have a little bit to play for. I believe they have an outside shot of getting a second seed. So I think that Jared Goff, is an excellent play today in tournaments. I do like Jordan Love for the efficiency against a tough Chicago defense that's played better over the season, but I think he's still a fantastic play here. Kyler Murray, I think he's a good play against Seattle. It allows you to also play Geno Smith in that turn because it'll be pushback. So I like those 2 guys a lot as well. And then I'm getting to some, obviously, Jalen Hurts and Tyrod Taylor. This is a divisional game. I think that the game could be it could be a little bit of a shootout, but we'll see with the way the weather is playing out. Because it is kind of snowing over here in New York a little bit. A lot, actually. And then we got Trevor Lawrence, who I think is a great play. I know he's been hurt and didn't play the last game, but they have a lot to play for here. Tennessee doesn't really have anything to play for. They want to just play spoilers. Tennessee still has a bad secondary. We would pick on that any other time. And then we also have had received the last time they played. That was I think Trevor Lawrence's best fantasy game. So why not go back to it?
Yeah, Tennessee's in shambles, and I mean, Mike Vrabel wants to win, but also I'm keeping an eye on the draft pick watch, I guess. I like the Jaguar spot as well. I like Calvin Ridley today. We'll get there. Quarterback, for me, I'm looking at the pay-ups, and man, I know Squirrel was talking about Dak. I think the Cowboys are in a great spot, and what a position they're finally in to win the NFC East. And, get a little bit of home field. And as the Birds are trying to figure things out, Josh Allen's super expensive. But I know it's the shiny toy. It's the late night hammer. But, man, there's a part of me that just think Buffalo rolls. And We'll see what happens there. Super expensive, but there's a slate. This is a slate where you can afford pretty much anybody that you want if there's going to be one. So, anything else on quarterback, guys, or do you want to move on to running back?
No, I think we can move on.
All right. Well, looking at running back here, I got the FanDuel prices up. Top of the slate, couple inactive guys. Christian McCaffrey banged up, Kyron Williams doubtful to play with the situation that the Rams are in. But there's a lot of cheap options, a lot of values. There are some guys like Aaron Jones that are playing some real meaningful football. Kenneth Walker, great price, great matchup. TJ, what are you looking at here for running back today?
All right, just a heads up. My cat is right around my mic, and so if he unplugs it, throw it right to Dre. But no, it looks like he's leaving now. Absolute mischief every time I'm on a show. Running back today, like I said, on FanDuel, Devon Achane is definitely my number one guy here. After that, I'm looking to, as my next favorite options, I'm looking to the Philadelphia guys, because with no Swift playing against the Giants, it's really like both Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott I want to take shots on. So Gainwell is obviously like the clear cash single entry optimal style option. He's $4,900. We're expecting him to get the majority of the workload. And then for tournaments, obviously you do have the Boston Scott, New York Giants narrative. And I don't really care about the narrative as much as I care about, they already ruled Swift out. Who's to say they don't just baby Kenneth Gainwell too? Because he's actually a very big part of their offense. Like, he's their third down back. He's their 2-minute drill back. And so I could easily see them resting Gainwell as well. So I do think he's the single entry kind of cash option. Behind Devon Achane, I think he's the next best option. But Boston Scott, don't forget about him for tournaments, because again, we do have that narrative, but I don't think it's as much about the Giants narrative as it is about they might just rest Boston Scott as well. Next guy on the list for me would be Zamir White. He's just fully taken on the top role here for Oakland. That's supposed to be a fast-paced, not a lot of defense game. So I like me some Zamir White. Denver's terrible against the run. So Pierre Strong, Jordan Mason, Ronnie Rivers, these guys have fallen a little bit lower for me since we got the Philadelphia news. I still like them for large field tournaments, but I don't think they're necessarily cash game options. But Rachaad White would probably be the last guy that I really like today. Carolina's terrible against the run. Tampa Bay needs to win. I think this is going to be a big Rachaad White day.
What if tinfoil hat time? What if it's the Rashard Penny week? What if he's active? I mean,
I think he might be active, but I still don't think it's going to be.
He was active a couple times, but I still understand what's happening there. But you're right. Gainwell is the 2-minute guy in that offense. So, how do you place a value on, then again, we saw Gus Edwards, playing yesterday. Isaiah Likely, got a ton of playing time. So it's tough to speculate what's really going to happen. So, Dre, I'm curious to hear your takes on the running back today. Let's see what's going on.
Yeah, I'm kind of total opposite about it with Gainwell. I think he's going to play a lot. I was looking at the times when Swift didn't play. Gainwell pretty much got majority of the workload there. Just from a quick glance of me looking at it. So I like Gainwell a lot here, especially against the Giants, who just are not that great up front, even though they've been playing a little bit better. So I'm going to get a lot of kind of Gainwell today. I do like getting Zamir White a lot, like TJ mentioned. I think that's a fantastic play. Going to be overweight of the field on him. I do also like Rachaad White too as well. I like to one of these Detroit running backs too. Just a little bit of tournaments. Like I said, Detroit's one of my favorite GPP teams. So I personally prefer Gibbs over Montgomery. So I'm going to play more Gibbs this week than Montgomery. Then I'm going to be probably at the field, though, honestly, when it comes to like Ronnie Rivers and Jordan Mason. I feel like I want to be over, but I think this being at the field, I think is good enough for me. I like Tony Pollard a lot. Aaron Jones, I think, is a sneakily good running back. That's not getting talked about a lot like he should be, I feel. He's got 20 carries last couple games. So he's looking like he's healthy, and they can just rely on him to run the ball and catch the ball at the backfield against the Chicago secondary. Against the Chicago defense, sorry. And then obviously Chuba Hubbard. I think that he's also a great tournament play, as well as Saquon Barkley. today as well.
Yeah, and the big thing, no AJ Dillon touchdown vulture in the picture today for Green Bay. So about 12:30 here. Let's move on to wide receiver here. A couple expensive options up top: CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, and Justin Jefferson, all playing some meaningful football. Amon-Ra St. Brown, what a year he's had. We think Detroit starters are like, we don't know. We're speculating on Detroit, right? I mean, I don't know if either of you have a lean either way, but they have Mike Evans against Carolina, obviously Tampa Bay, playing for the division and the playoffs as well. So out of the top 5 wide receivers, some of those guys with huge ceilings are playing some real football today. TJ, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, Dan Campbell doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to be trying to rest his starters, especially when they still mathematically have a chance to move up in the standings, even if it's incredibly slim. Going back to Detroit, going back to Philadelphia quick with the running backs. Apologies if I didn't word this properly, but I do love Kenneth Gainwell today. Kenneth Gainwell is the top option. I just think if you are running a ton of lineups, you want to keep Boston Scott in your pool as well. But for the wide receiver position on FanDuel, where you can play him, Tyreek Hill is definitely the top option. I want to get Hill and A-Chain in my lineups for a single entry and a cash game setting. Chris Olave for that price is fantastic. I love Devontae Adams today. DJ Moore is priced up here a little bit, but I still don't mind him. AJ Brown is priced down. I'm worried about his workload, but that's just like AJ Brown with $1,000 cheaper than the Hills and the Jeffersons and the Lambs. That just feels kind of crazy to me. Lamb at 10K is going to be the one that falls under the radar falls by the wayside for me a little bit on FanDuel. Not as much on DraftKings, but on FanDuel where he's 10K, and I would just rather play Tyreek Hill. I would rather play Justin Jefferson. I'd rather pay all the way down for the Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins range today. So CeeDee Lamb is probably going to be the guy that falls to the wayside for me. Last guy I wanted to mention on FanDuel specifically, there's more cheap options on DraftKings. FanDuel, I don't think I really need it all that much, but Zay Jones at 5,600, I think is fine. But my favorite cheapie today, Rashid Shaheed, 6K, I think is fine. My favorite cheapie, though, is going to be Gabe Davis at 6,400, a run back for those A-Chain and Tyreek Hill lineups. And then, where is he here? Why can't I find him anymore? Drake London. Drake London at 3% projected ownership on FanDuel, 6,200. Love him for tournaments today.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Gabe Davis, and baffling that Stephon Diggs hasn't had 100 yards since before Halloween.
And he's going to have Jalen Ramsey following him today.
I'm not sure that I care. I think Josh Allen's going to go to his guy. He's still 10th in the league in target share. I'll agree with you that I want some Bills today. I don't know if I'm going to land on Josh Allen on FanDuel, but Stephon Diggs, 7,600, the biggest game of the season. I want one of him or Gabe Davis today.
I agree. Diggs is underpriced. I should have mentioned him as well.
No, but I mean, if you're playing large field, Gabe Davis, a little bit scarier, much wider range of outcomes. At this point, maybe you could argue about that too as well. Anyway, Dre, wide receiver, loaded position. What do you got?
I love pretty much all the guys that you guys have mentioned so far and talked about. But the guys I'm going to be obviously overweight on, it's going to be CeeDee Lamb. I think I'm just going to attack this Dallas game, attack that Washington secondary. So I'll be high on CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, DeAndre Hopkins. Just pretty much play any guys in meaningful positions today, or have a purpose to be played. I love getting to Mike Evans a good amount today too against the Carolina secondary. That seems to can't stop him. I do also like Calvin Ridley a lot here today. And Devontae Adams, as was mentioned before, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like to get to today. I'm going to play these Giants guys just for some runback purposes. With AJ Brown, I like him a good amount today as well. And I think that you can, like I mentioned before, I'm getting a lot of Curtis Samuel. It's going to be probably my second most exposed wide receiver today. So I like him a lot in this position. And Chris Olave too, I think is a good play.
Yeah, big game for both of you Saints fans. today. But
Yeah, it doesn't really matter because Tampa's going to beat Carolina.
Exactly.
We've seen weirder things happen. We have.
It's true, but yeah, I don't know.
That line actually moved a point towards Carolina later in the week. So late money on the Panthers with the spread. Never know. Like as a Saints fan, do you? I mean, of course, you want your team to win. Do you actually want to win the division and then draw?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
It's I don't care about the difference. Like obviously you want a top pick, but I don't care about 14 versus 20. And so yeah, I want them to make the playoffs.
I just want to get a quarterback. I just want a quarterback.
You have one. You got Taysom Hill. He's scoring today, by the way. And by the way, we're talking about
he probably is without Alvin Kamara. He's probably is going to score today, and I don't have him, and that was just an oversight. But whatever.
Well, talk to me about some of your more oversights or who you actually do have at tight end, TJ. Let's go.
Trey McBride is always the top option. Even if he's healthy, Travis Kelce is not the best fantasy tight end in football anymore. It's Trey McBride. And so 6,700, that is underpriced for him. My next, I think you're either paying all the way up to McBride or you're in single entry optimal cash. I don't know if that's what I'm supposed to be talking about, but I've kind of assumed that role today, so I'm sticking with it. It's McBride or you're going down to Johnny Mundt. Johnny Mundt got all the work last week with Hawkinson out. We like Mullins today. Detroit runs a pass funnel. Johnny Mundt is great. Gerald Everett is underpriced, especially with all these guys out. He's probably going to get another 8 targets today. And then Jawan Johnson has just been an absolute touchdown machine. So I think McBride, Everett, Mundt, and Johnson are you're looking at as your top options today.
All right, go ahead, Dre.
McBride is my top option at tight end. I like getting to Jake Ferguson too as well. And Dallas Goedert, love getting to him today as well. Darren Waller, those are the top tight ends I would be playing a lot of today. I'm going to have some Salem Porter here as well too, and a little bit of Cole Kmet. I'm going to have a sprinkle of Jawan Johnson just because every time I don't play him, he seems to score a touchdown, and he might do it again. So I have a little bit of him, but other than that, that's really it. And Johnny Mundt as well.
I like the Jake Ferguson call, especially if you're looking for a Dak build and a little bit of a Cowboy slaughter. Maybe they're scoreboard peaking. Maybe the Philly Giants game is close. So I like that Jake Ferguson call quite a bit. I think Evan Ingram.
I'm adding Taysom to my pool right now, fellas. Sorry to interrupt, Luch, but I'm making it happen. I'm adding Taysom to the pool.
I love it. All right. Let's see. It's 12:38 about here. Eastern time. Do we want to talk about any defenses? I mean, usually we just take those questions in the chat, but I mean, a lot of players sitting, a lot of volatility, a lot of chance for some chaos here. So yeah, Dre, since TJ is editing his pool, what's your pool for defenses look like today? Who do you like?
Yeah, I'm editing my defensive pool right now too. I was getting a lot of Chargers, but I'm trying to get off of that.
I'll just say that's you play Chargers in cash. You have to play Chargers in cash. They're cheap and super highly owned. Play anybody else in tournaments. Don't play the Chargers in tournaments.
Yeah, I'm going underway on the Chargers for sure. But I really, really, really do like the Jets in that weather game. I think that even though it's going to be low scored, they can still get some turnovers here. I like the Bengals a little bit. I really like the Oakland, goodness gracious, Las Vegas Raiders. I really like them a lot today. So I'm going to have a lot of Raiders today. I think that they can really, really do some damage against Denver today. So I'm getting to a lot of them. I'm going to get some Cowboys and some Saints as well as my main defense. And I also don't mind getting to the Chicago Bears, so they have been playing better defense the last few weeks.
TJ and Drake, give me kind of a contrarian off the wall stack that might be not one of your primary ones, but something volatile you think has some ceiling today. TJ, what are you looking at?
Tyrod Taylor and the New York Giants would probably be my favorite, very sneaky one today. He's not going super duper low owned, but I think the full stack, you throw him with Slayton and Robinson, pick 2 to 3, Slayton, Robinson, and Darren Waller. And he's not as popular as last week because he's gone up about $1,000. But I think Tyrod Taylor would probably be my favorite sneaky option today. You want to get really sneaky? It's uncomfortable, but it's Desmond Ridder. Nobody's going to play him. He just got ruled in 30 minutes ago. He peppers Drake London every time he's out there. Marshawn Lattimore is still out. The Saints defense is good, but that game is super fast-paced. It's probably going to have more plays in it than any other game today. Desmond Ridder is the super sneaky option.
Desmond Ridder. It's uncomfortable, but that's okay. That's why we're here. Go ahead, Trey.
That's very uncomfortable. I could not even do it.
Going out for TJ's Desmond Ridder.
It's like I have 5% in 150. So it's like he's my lowest owned quarterback, but he's in the pool.
I get it. I'm just playing. I get it. Go ahead, Trey.
Yeah. Mine is probably Tyrod Taylor and Jared Goff, as I mentioned before. Jared Goff's going to be like 2% owned, if that. And it's a 25-point total. Like, if Vegas is predicted that, and that's one of the more. XC just went up 25.5. I see it update the line. So if they're predicting that and they end up doing that today, that's actually the. I think that's the second highest total on the slate behind Dallas. So to me, I'm just gonna go right there and hope that it ends up being that way.
We had a weather question, and we didn't really cover weather. Just looking at Roth's weather page on RotoGrinders, which is rotogrinders.com/weather/NFL. The Giants game is green. A lot of green today. There's a yellow spot, really? Cleveland and Cincinnati. Roth said cold with a few spotty rain or snow showers with a little bit of wind. We briefly talked about weather with the Jets game. I know Erik and Squirrel mentioned it in the previous show. So that's orange, but a lot of green today. Not a lot of weather spots. Just some cold. It's January. We got January football going on. So I guess let's circle back and we'll take some questions. Let me pop in the Discord quick.
So we run through a DraftKings, Bill?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk some DK quick, and then
my stuff is pretty much the same as DK.
I got some differences due to price, so I'll just like rip through. That's where I played 150, so like I'll rip through my tournament exposure quick over there because I see we do have a lot of DraftKings questions and a few people asking if we'd go through the build in YouTube. So I like that. Well, I'll go through that quick. I mean,
go for it.
So quarterback over there, Mullins is the cash game play. Like he's just so much cheaper everywhere else. And so I think it's just between Mullins and Fields. Mullins is the top guy, but Fields is my second quarterback today. I'm trying to stack up the second half of those games as much as possible. Dak and Tyrod are going to be the two guys I'm going to the most after that. But then I'm taking shots on Driscoll, Carr, Desmond Ridder, and Jake Browning as well. At running back, Zamir White, Kenneth Gainwell, Rashad White, Breece Hall. Those are my top options today, but I also want to make sure I'm mixing in Boston Scott and then all these other cheap running backs like Mason, Elliott, Rivers, Chase Brown, Pierre Strong. These guys in tournaments too. And then, of course, Aaron Jones, like Dre mentioned, I like him quite a bit as well. Justin Jefferson's my top receiver. DJ Moore is number 2. CD Lamb's number 3. I like him way more on DraftKings than I do on FanDuel. Darius Slayton is one of my favorite cheap options today. I think he's going to go deep on Philadelphia at least once today. Amon-Ra St. Brown, another guy that I really like as well. So many cheap options you can use if you need to take cheap shots on like 3K-ish guys. Andre Yoshivas, Rashid Shaheed, Trent Irwin, Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, Zay Jones, Ronnie Bell, Richie James, Parker Washington, Jackson Smith-Njigba. All of these guys totally fine to play as a last piece if you need a cheap wide receiver today. Tight end, it's the same as FanDuel. It's Trey McBride, Johnny Munt, Gerald Everett, but you also do have Noah Gray at Noah Gray at min price with no Travis Kelce. Obviously, there's no Mahomes either, but Noah Gray, $2,500. I think he's totally fine as a cash option. On DraftKings, that version of you have to play them in cash and then don't play them in tournaments, it's the Bengals defense. They're going to be 20+% owned. They are the cash defense. Do not play them in tournaments.
Nice rundown. Credit given, words due. I like it. All right, back into the Discord here. We got a couple questions in there. Then we'll head to the YouTube chat. Let's see. Single entry FanDuel question. Andre, would you rather have Dak and Tyreek Hill or Gino and Olave. And I'm not sure how that makes sense, but I'm here for it.
Yeah. Give me the first one.
Yep. In the same breath, any love for Bijan Robinson today, guys?
No.
I'm gonna have him, but it's a love-hate relationship.
I understand. I think it's love-hate with pretty much everybody in Arthur Smith at this point.
Yeah, I love Bijan Robinson. I hate Arthur Smith is my love-hate. And because of that, I'm not going to play him.
That's fair. I got a question about props. Check out Scores and Odds. TX DFS in the chat. Check out Scores and Odds, man. Or the props and pick 'em package. I mean, just so much volume over there at SAO every week. I don't have any props this week. My only bet is Bills money line. Let's see what happens. What could go wrong? FanDuel single entry question. TJ, CeeDee Lamb and Pierre Strong, or Kenneth Gainwell and Tyreek Hill?
Definitely Gainwell and Hill by a lot.
By a lot. Okay, like it. Cash game wide receivers, 6,500 or less on FanDuel. Andre, do you need a second to look up those parameters and I'll get back to you?
Cash game wide receiver, you said?
Yep, 6,500 or less.
Yeah, give me a second.
Okay.
You're not going to like it, but the answer is Drake London.
Let me see if I can find someone else.
Hey, because I was talking to Andre. Andre, give me someone else other than Drake London.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Good God Almighty! It really is probably Drake London. That's the sad part.
It's London, Cooks, or Watson as the three options. Like Gabe Davis is there too, but you can't play him in cash.
I mean, if you really want to, I like Curtis Samuel a lot. I would play him in cash because I love him a lot. I would do that.
Question from Boolies in the Discord. Good one. Is there any clear RB1 in the KC backfield today? He wants to attack that Chargers defense a little bit. TJ, what are your thoughts on the Chiefs? We didn't mention the Chiefs today. I mean, probably for rightfully so. But any lean today with Kansas City? Anything at all?
Noah Gray and Richie James are the only two guys on the team I'm planning on playing. If I were to guess, it would be LaMichael Pirine, or Perrine, however you say his name, LaMichael Pirine, who gets the bulk of the work for the Chargers today. For the Chiefs today, but I genuinely do not know.
Yeah, it's a bit of a circus this week. DK tournament question for you, Andre. Would you rather pay up for Rashad White or Mike Evans today against Carolina?
Evans. Oh, dang, that's tough. Probably actually in GPPs, Evans and cash White.
That's fair. All right, I'm gonna pop over to the YouTube chat here. Let's see. Just making sure I didn't miss anything when we started the show. Okay, FanDuel Cash. Question from Jack toward the top of the show. TJ, at Flex, who would you rather have for FanDuel Cash? Tyler Lockett, Aaron Jones, or Kelvin Ridley for FanDuel Cash?
Aaron Jones for cash.
All right. Yeah, I agree. I'm with that as well. Especially, I know AJ Dillon and Dre mentioned Jones earlier today. Let's see. Question about the Cleveland from Keith, Cleveland backfield, about Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt. He's trying to play Pierre Strong. What are your thoughts about Pierre Strong today, Dre?
I'm not really getting much of him, honestly. Just on the Bills I'm running.
Okay. Let's see. What's the deal with Detroit? Are they going to play the whole game, TJ? You got any? We talked about Dan Campbell a little bit.
I think they're going to end up playing the full game here. They got a small mathematical chance of improving, and Dan Campbell seems like the type of guy that is going to try and win every game.
Okay. DraftKings question for you, Dre. I'm assuming this is a tournament build. Would you rather have Brandon Cooks or Jordan Addison today?
Cooks.
Okay. Sorry about that. I was reading. Sometimes when you read too much, my brain's ready to shut off, and it's not even 1 o'clock today. Julio Jones, is he going to step into the Devontae Smith role? Eagles trying to work out their offensive issues. Anybody got any Julio Jones today?
No. I thought about it briefly for a split second, but I said I'll just take my chances.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just too many other cheapies. I'd honestly rather take a shot on Olamide Zacchaeus if I'm taking a super cheap Philadelphia guy, just because I could see that, like, if this game gets a little bit out of hand, I could see him being on the field more because he's younger. But still, there's just too many other cheap guys I like better on different teams.
I don't mind Julio if you're throwing out 100 lineups. I don't mind a couple of Julio shares. If I'm playing one lineup, I'm probably not using them, but I don't hate it. Let's see. Any love for Mike Gesicki at tight end, Andre?
No.
Okay. Cowboys defense for leverage, asks Michael in the YouTube chat. TJ, Cowboys D? What are you thinking there?
Love it. They are my highest owned defense on DraftKings.
Another defense question. I'll give this one to Dre. What about New England's defense for DraftKings tournaments?
I don't mind it either. I can run either Jets or New England. I think they both are good.
Here's a really good 2v2, TJ. Would you rather have your boy Etienne and DJ Moore or Kenneth Walker and Justin Jefferson?
Oh, definitely A-Chain and more.
Okay, that's tough, but we'll go with your response. No love for Brees Hall. Anybody like Brees Hall today?
Love Brees Hall today in tournaments.
Okay.
I have 28% on DraftKings.
I have 0.
I love it. Drastic differences. Okay. A question from Kid Catastrophe in the YouTube chat. Is it a catastrophe if you play Kenneth Walker and James Conner in the same FanDuel lineup? And I like that question because we know from correlations that oftentimes running back on opposite teams in the same game aren't the best correlation. But two workhorses here, decent spread. I don't hate it. But Kenneth Walker and James Conner, does that give you anxiety when they're paired together? Andre, what are your thoughts on that one?
Not really. I don't mind it, but I really would like to get a lot more Kenneth Walker today, but I just even can't even do it because how often is he going to put up a big fantasy point game for me? That's my logic behind it. I'd rather just go with these other running backs who I like a lot, like Aaron Jones, and other guys who have more upside.
What are your thoughts on Tony Pollard today, TJ?
0%.
Dre, you got more than 0?
Pollard, how much Pollard do I actually have? I like him today, but I don't know how much I have. I have 22% right now.
Okay, so we'll call it even at 11%. That's how much we like Tony Pollard today.
Dre and I are essentially on the same page for receivers and QBs, and then just on different ones for running backs, and even tight ends and defenses, just different ones for running backs today.
Yeah.
TJ, I'll throw this over to you. FanDuel Cash, can you play Dak without any of his weapons today? For cash.
You can for cash. I would rather go cheaper than him, but yes, that's fine for cash game.
All right.
I would just rather go Justin Fields, though, and use that $300 somewhere else.
All right. Gotcha. Cash game question from D Gold in the Discord. Andre, I'll give this one to you. Would you rather have Ridley, Hopkins, or Lockett for cash on I don't know what site, but who would you rather have for cash?
Ridley, Hopkins, or Lockett?
Yep.
Gosh, probably Ridley. Yeah, Ridley.
Okay. Let's see. Thought TJ just said Chargers were the cash D. Yeah, I mean they are, but doesn't mean
I answered that one for them in the chat already. Chargers on FanDuel, Bengals on DraftKings. I think
it doesn't mean you cannot play them. Like, just limit chalk elsewhere in your tournament lineup. Yeah. I mean, I have a single entry build and I'm having trouble not playing them right now. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. Here's a good DK one. Oh, nice. KJ Osborne or Darius Slayton, Andre? Single entry DraftKings.
Slayton.
All right. TJ, Ronnie Rivers and Dallas defense or Kenneth Gainwell and New England defense for DraftKings single entry?
Gainwell and New England.
All right. FanDuel Cash question, Andre. Rank these running backs: Kenneth Gainwell, Pierre Strong, and Mr. Mason in San Francisco.
Ooh. Strong. Gainwell, Mason, Strong.
Any Austin Hooper in your pool, Andre?
No.
Question for TJ from Did the Spidey Bombs Hit Yesterday, who at one point I thought was you, and it's not. So that's a funny story. Would you rather have James Conner or Trey McBride straight up?
Give me a second here. I don't have any Connor in my pool, but I'm also not planning on playing any flex tight ends today. And so I just want to check what Connor's projection is here. 15.4. I would go Connor.
Okay. FanDuel single entry. Andre, would you rather have Olave in the Raiders defense or Rashid Shaheed in the Cowboys defense?
Olave and the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm with you. Another Julio Jones question. I'm okay with large field. I think we touched on your Julio Jones questions earlier. I wouldn't play Julio in one lineup, but like I understand it. If you're playing some large field tournaments, I don't mind having a couple Julio Jones shares. Devontae Adams or Mike Evans, TJ? I don't know what format, just I guess in general. Who would you rather play today?
Devontae.
Okay. Darius Slayton for DK tournaments. TJ, I know likes Darius Slayton. I can't remember.
Fire him up.
I can't remember what Andre's take was.
I'm playing a lot of Tyrod Taylor today, so I don't mind it at all.
Makes sense. Thoughts on Quentin Johnston against the Chiefs backup? Large field stuff on DK. It's 4,300 left. Could it finally be the Quentin Johnston week? Any Quentin Johnston?
I don't know Quentin Johnston.
I mean, week 18 backups, a lot of volatility. If you're playing one lineup, I wouldn't go there, but 20 lineups, 30 lineups, okay. You can play a little Quentin Johnston. I don't hate it.
Couple things quick before lock. We got 600 people watching. We need way more likes. We only got like 100 and some likes. We should be at least 300 with 600 people watching. Next thing, I think Squirrel and Erik brought up a really, really good point on the GPP Final Takes show. This is the biggest afternoon set of games we've had all season. There are more afternoon games than morning games today. When you can, if you have a tiebreaker, this is also going to be the week that has more news than any other week. If you have a tiebreaker, but right now between an early guy and a late guy in your main lineups, use the late guy, because we got lucky with that DeAndre Swift news, but there's still going to be a lot more news coming. Heck, we could see something like Elijah Mitchell will get the bulk of the workload for the 49ers, or we could get him out, which makes Jordan Mason probably the best running back play on the slate. We don't know. There's a lot of news that's still coming. If you have a tiebreaker, use the later half. Currently for me, in my main single entry lineups, I'm going with the Justin Fields team in my main single entry lineup today. I have the Jets defense as my only player from the early set of games.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice as well. And I have one player from 1 p.m. right now in my. Oh man, Hammer's dropping a Saskatoon city drop. Town or city? How many people live in Saskatoon?
300K.
Wow. I would have hit the under hard. That shows my Canadian geography is way off. I apologize for that. Guess you got some decent barbers there, though. At least it's got to be one. Right?
Hammer's been giving me a tough time for the haircut since Friday. It's been mostly compliments, but I think I was on 3 different shows yesterday, and Hammer was there for all of them, giving me a tough time.
I think it looks good. Cedric Wilson? ? Cedric Wilson? Anybody?
What's his price?
So it was our last question, I think, and I think I hit all the questions. So sorry if I missed you. I think my hit
Cedric
percentage is pretty high this season.
Is okay, I think.
Okay, cool.
He's
Hammer's the goat. The people love the Hammer. I love it. Hammer's the goat. 1 o'clock, we hit lock. 5,400, Cedric Wilson.
I would rather if I'm playing a lineup if I'm playing a lot of lineups and I want to make I know I would be heavily overweight on on A-Chain and Tyreek Hill. And so I would have a few Cedric Wilson teams in lineups that I'm spending up for somebody else. Like, say I want to run a Justin Jefferson or a CeeDee Lamb type lineup. That would be maybe where I'd go to some Cedric Wilson because I'm fading Tyreek Hill.
I know my guy B-Shots in the YouTube chat thinking I ignored him, but I just wanted to get the important questions out of the way. He asked you guys about J.J. McCarthy in a Saints uniform and what your thoughts would be about that. Big game, college football, national title.
I don't know anything about college football, so I'm not the one to ask.
Oh, he's a Michigan quarterback. Honestly, anyone's better than Derek Carr right now. I personally really want us to start Jameis, but that's just wishful thinking.
The Rams will sit Puka Nacua once he reaches the rookie receiving yards record. He needs 4 receptions and 29 yards.
That's interesting. What a year, by the way, for Puka. Rams are hot.
Yeah, they're going to make the playoffs, too. It's going to be interesting to see.
Do you follow the CFL, TJ? Serious question.
Yeah, I not as much now as I used to, but I like from age 5 to 22, I had season tickets to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and then that was actually my first writing job. When I was like 13 or 14, I was a senior writer for CFL for Bleacher Report.
13, 14 years old and a senior writer, not even.
Yeah, they were a pretty brand new site, and there was not many people writing about CFL, so I would write like 3 articles a week and just dominate the homepage.
Nice. Yeah, last full week. Good luck, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us for this whole regular season. You know, our entire NFL block every Sunday. We wouldn't be here without you guys. So thanks for being here. You guys got anything else, or are we out of here?
I think that's it for me. I'll be back later today for NBA Crunch Time and later today for the Sunday Night Football pre-lock show with Will. So lots more content coming. We'll see everybody later. Smash that like button on your way out.
Dre, we getting a Saints win or what?
Yes, we are definitely getting a Saints win today. I just hope that Tampa loses. So, and I just want to say good luck to everybody. I hope you guys, finish first. You got contest. Second, contest of Abid, of course, obviously. And I'll see you next week, hopefully.
For Dre, TJ, and producer Steve, I'm the Luch. Later, guys.